Hi, everyone. It is 12:30 here in Charlotte. You are watching Live Impact News on WCNC Plus. Nick Sturdivant off today. I'm Jane Monreal. Want to get to some breaking news, a situation we are following out of Sampson County. This is a look right now at what's happening along I-40 in Sampson County, where a tractor trailer overturned earlier this morning, and this is a single big rig carrying fuel that hit a slower moving passenger. The fire is pretty much out. It happened around near Faison, and the impact caused the tractor trailer to overturn. It hit a slower moving passenger in the eastbound lane. Minor damage that we're hearing to at least one of the vehicles, but it seems that fuel needs to be mopped up, and it's going to take hours to clean up, as you're looking at this aerial shot right now. So this rig that caused an explosion shut down I-40, and at this point we do know that it remains closed off right now. This is a look from one of our viewers actually on their cell phone that also turned in some video. Fire blazing, and you can see all of that black smoke. So that's a lot of fuel in that truck, and fire crews on scene. They're going to have to bring, not minor damage to the rig. You can see that it is pretty much totaled, whatever's left. But hazmat crews need to come in there. They need to assess any kind of environmental spill. Usually when something like that goes, you can see the wilderness and a lot of trees and greenery there. So I can only imagine this will be shut down through the afternoon drive. We do know it was closed this morning for the morning drive. So rush hour traffic out of Raleigh in Sampson County. Truck exploded, shutting down I-40. It remains closed at this hour at 12:30 right now. All right. Live Impact News here at 12:32. We are also covering a number of other stories. This morning, we heard from Treasury Secretary Bessent, as well as Press Secretary Karoline Leavitt, talking about the tariffs impact. Karoline Leavitt now holding a separate press conference right now. We are going to take that live on Impact News on WCNC Plus.
And all people to borrow money, to take out those loans, to buy your first home. And so we got to increase the supply, bring down costs, and bring down interest rates and mortgage rates. And by the way, those are all things the president successfully did in his first term. When he left office, inflation was a record low 1.4%. Interest rates, mortgage rates also hit record lows in his first term. So this is a proven economic formula that works. It takes time to get there. We are in the process of the golden age. The president and the admin are slacking slashing regulation every day, cutting red tape, cutting costs, and we need, again, Congress to pass those tax cuts to put more money back in people's pockets so they have greater purchasing power as well. You're welcome. Sure.
Teresa Nwuka with Independent Women and WMAL.
Oh, great.
We love working with the administration to really tout policies that work for families and work for small businesses in this country. Next week is Small Business Week, and I know that the SBA will be, championing all the small businesses, the millions in this country, almost half of which are women-owned. But I'd love to find out what the president feels about independent contractors who are not typical W-2 employees, not 9-to-5 workers, but who hang their own shingle. They're 1099 workers. We saw the Biden administration really try to crack down on that entrepreneurial spirit, and we're hopeful that the administration would overturn what the Biden administration did and maybe even work with Congress to pass some lasting changes, codify some lasting changes that would protect, your ability to be self-employed, your ability to be a small business owner.
Well, the president is a businessman at heart himself, right? He's a real estate developer, and I think that's a large reason the American people elected him the first time and the second time, because they trust in him. And small businesses are the backbone of our American economy. I come from a small business family myself, and the president knows what small business families need and independent contractors need, entrepreneurs need. You need less government in the way. You need less regulation. You need low energy costs, low taxes, a low cost of living, a low cost of goods. And that's exactly what the president is focused on doing, while simultaneously effectively leveraging tariffs to protect our middle class and our working class and our manufacturing base. You look at our auto industry, think about Michigan. It used to be the heartland of the auto industry of the world. It was the auto capital of the world. And unfortunately, so many of those jobs have gone overseas. And so the president wants to protect good paying jobs here at home and unleash the might of our economy for small business owners. And that includes removing red tape and cutting taxes. And as for independent contractors and what the president would hope to do with Congress, we'll definitely check back in on that and get you an answer, because it's an important question. You're welcome. Sure.
Hi, Will Upton, the National Pulse. You kind of gave us an overview of negotiations between Ukraine and Russia 100 days in. What would the next steps look like, though, if we don't reach an agreement by, say, this summer? And also, can you give us an update on the rare earth minerals deal with Ukraine? And is there any kind of response from the administration to Greenlandic Foreign Minister Vivian Motzfeldt, some of her comments about maybe seeking aid with China?
Sure. To your first question about the critical minerals deal, the president is confident that will be signed. Ukraine needs to sign it. They should sign it. It's not just good for the United States to recoup the billions of tax dollars we've spent and onshore some of those critical minerals, but certainly it's good for the Ukrainian people when this war is over to rebuild their country. It's an economic partnership between the United States and Ukraine. That's what the president envisions, and he wants Ukraine to sign that deal. He's confident that they will. As for what it would look like later down the road, I don't want to get ahead of the president, obviously, but again, I will reiterate, he's increasingly grown frustrated in the amount of time our Secretary of State recently said, there's not much more time or effort the United States has to give to this effort, and so we need both sides to come to the table to negotiate. As for Greenland, I hadn't seen those comments. If true, I'm sure they are. Certainly an interesting strategy to cozy up to communist China. Greenland needs the United States of America. We subsidize their national security and their defense. And the president has rightfully pointed out the great strategic importance that Greenland serves for not just our national security and economic interests, but for our country and for the world as a whole. And we can't allow Chinese or Russian influence to continue to infiltrate places like Greenland or the Panama Canal, I may add. Into the back.
Can you talk about the importance of a stock market all-time high, specifically in relation to the midterms? And it seems like a lot of folks, when Trump was elected, they thought that stock market goes up. He really cares about that. He uses it as a measurement of the economy. It's gone down, but still up, over the last 12 months or so. So how much of that is playing into some of the economic policy decisions?
I think the president has spoken on this. He said the stock market gets yippee, but he doesn't get yippee. He trusts in his economic agenda and formula, obviously. And, Wall Street made out very well in President Trump's first term. President Trump also wants to look out for Main Street and do what's best for both. So I think the president right now, his main focus, what drives him to make decisions is what's best for the working class Americans, for the American worker, for the small business owner, for American families. And he's trying to correct the wrongs of the last several decades, not just the last 4 years with the economic and inflation nightmare caused by the Biden administration, but of the unfair trade practices that have ripped off our country for a very long time. So look, the stock market goes up, it goes down, but President Trump has a goal, he has a vision, and he's remaining very much committed to that. So thank you so much, everybody, for joining today. We're heading off to Michigan tonight for a big rally, so I am sure we'll see all of your amazing creative content on social media later. It's going to be a great speech, and maybe you'll get a Trump dance too. So thank you so much for coming today. It's a pleasure to have you here. Thank you.
You are watching a press briefing just wrapping up live there from Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt talking to members of the new media. It is the fringe media group companies as well. So just addressing some of the positions in President Trump's first 100 days in office, and they are heading to Michigan where the president is expected to give a speech there. A state that he won in 2024. I want to go right now to the retrial of Karen Read. Today is day 6 of the Karen Read retrial out of Dedham, Massachusetts, just outside of the Boston area. Ms. Read is being charged with second-degree manslaughter and the death of her boyfriend back in 2022 at a party that was held at another police officer's house in Canton. And right now they have been talking to a digital forensics expert who's been taking the stand, talking about the cell phone coverage going through their calls and that timeline. So he's still on the stand today. We're going to look at this, dip into this trial right now that's happening live on Impact News on WCNC+.
At 12:37, you offered us that the cell phone battery's temperature is decreasing.
Yes.
How many calls have been made from the defendant to John O'Keefe by the time that cell phone battery stops dropping in temperature?
7.
I want to turn now to some questions about your analysis of Ms. McCabe's phone. You were asked about hash values, a way of trying to confirm the integrity of the data on a extraction.
Yes.
When forensic analysts look at phones, do you sometimes get to actually see the phone?
Yes.
Do you sometimes have to use an extraction, a copy of the phone?
Yes.
Is it important to try to look and research or search the item to determine whether or not there's been any tampering?
Yes.
You were asked if hash values is one way to do that.
I was.
And you were shown or read part of your report about hash values.
Yes.
There's a second part to that, isn't there?
There is.
You didn't get a chance to share the second part, did you?
Objection, Your Honor. Sustained.
In this case, there was a hash value, wasn't there?
There was.
Now, just so we can understand simply, how is a hash value created during the extraction process? What does that mean in very, very simple terms?
Yeah. At the end of the extraction, an algorithm is run on every piece of, every byte of data within the extraction, and it comes out with a value at the end. The idea is that if any of that data ever changes, be it through user interaction or through corruption of data in how it was stored, then that value will change at the end.
You mentioned GrayKey. Is that a software, hardware that makes the copy of the phone?
It's a piece of hardware and includes software.
How commonly is GrayKey used in the industry?
It's very common.
Did I hear you say that with GrayKey, the hash value is never authenticated?
Objection, Your Honor. Sustained is to fall.
Does GrayKey authenticate the hash value?
The hash value is placed inside a PDF which is not signed.
And is that common or typical in the industry?
That is the way that GrayKey do it.
Was there anything anomaly or untoward or different about the way this one was done?
No.
Did the hash value from the GrayKey extraction match the hash value?
It did.
Anything irregular whatsoever about it?
No, not that I could see.
Now, you don't just read software programs when they spit out reports, do you?
No.
As an analyst, as one of the leaders of Celebrite, do you have a history of being a researcher?
Yes, I do.
A history of study?
Yes.
Have you written reports and papers for people to learn?
I've written multiple blogs, done multiple presentations, webinars. Some of my blog posts have become peer-reviewed articles.
Okay. Is it sufficient to simply look at a report that is generated by Celebrite or Axiom or any other service and make conclusions just on the report?
I don't believe it is, no.
Why do you think that's imprudent?
Sorry?
Why do you think that is not prudent to simply rely on a report?
Objection, Your Honor.
I'm going to allow him to answer.
The tools are very good at surfacing data, but I believe it's up to the examiner to understand what that data means and to provide context to the information which the tool itself can't give.
And when you were considering the hash value and determining whether or not you thought there was anything wrong with the data, aside from the hash value, how do you do that?
How do I do
How
what?
do you make a determination whether or not this has integrity, the data hasn't been tampered with, so to speak?
Okay. So, notwithstanding the hash value, I'd be looking for issues with the data that don't make sense. In this particular case, there was lots of data points that all appeared to work together. Like you would see one artifact change in one database and an artifact would change somewhere else. And it all just made perfect sense in how it was functioning. That kind of leads you to believe that it's not been tampered with, or the person tampering with it did an exceptional job to be able to cover all of these different tracks and make it undetectable.
Did you try to summarize that perspective in the part of the report that wasn't read to you on examination?
I did.
Do you have an opinion to a reasonable degree of scientific certainty if there was any data integrity issues in the information you reviewed?
I don't believe there was any.
It was characterized on examination there was a dispute about the time origin of the search, how long to die in code. Do you remember being asked the question about a dispute?
Yes.
Have you, in your studies and in your position, is there any viable dispute in the forensic data scientific community about that issue?
I don't believe there is anymore.
Now, you got involved in this case because you received a complaint from a consumer.
I received a question from a consumer, yes.
And you attempted to resolve that?
Correct.
Sustained as to form.
Other than that source, have you received any information, feedback, opinions that would make this issue in any way a dispute?
Objection, Your Honor.
I'll allow that.
I'm sorry, could you rephrase the question?
Other than that one person, that one consumer, have you received any information in the forensic community which you're part of?
Oh.
Any data, any information that would suggest that your conclusions are in dispute?
Yeah, I received a very similar question from an examiner in Europe. Fairly similar circumstances with a case and with a timestamp that didn't make sense, that was originating from the same database. I applied the same logic and theory to his question, and he confirmed it solved the issue for him. It all made sense then.
And since then, has in your world, academic and research world, forensic data science, other than the person who originally raised the question, has there been any dispute brought to you by anybody about your conclusions about when the search actually happened?
No. If anything, I've heard people who have confirmed the research that I did.
Do you know Jessica Hyde?
I do.
Is she well known in the forensic community?
She is.
You were asked questions about your law enforcement background and the fact that Celebrite is used as a forensic tool oftentimes by law enforcement.
Yes.
Did you go into your company's software and change it to accommodate law enforcement?
No, definitely not.
Would you ever do such a thing?
No.
Why wouldn't you do something like that?
Aside from being unethical to change the data in that way, this is an artifact that is easily validated by any examiner, and if I was to tamper it for the purposes of changing the outcome of the case, it would be detected by all of our customers immediately and would destroy the reputation of Cellbrite, which I've got no intention of doing.
Before a prior proceeding, the printout from the software, when it was showing the timestamp of the Safari search, was it labeled something in particular before?
The Cellbrite search
Yes.
was labeled last visited time.
Last what?
Last visited time.
And when it was labeled last visited time, did it show 227 on the report?
It did.
Cellbrite, after research and consideration, removed that label?
We removed the timestamp when we determined that it was not relevant to the last time that that page was visited.
Why was it important to remove that timestamp from the program and the software?
It was clearly causing confusion.
Does the company have concerns when consumers are confused about information?
Of course, yes.
Do companies have concerns if a consumer tries to manipulate the use of that information?
Of course.
Are companies concerned that a label could be misleading for somebody who may not have a higher level of experience?
Yes.
When that decision was made to change that for clarification, do you make that solely by yourself?
No, I did not.
Who do you consult with and who's part of that decision process?
So again, after my research, I passed the results of my research to the Forensic Research Group. This is a team based at Cellbrite whose sole job is to do the research, do the coding to make sure that what we're giving to customers is correct. They spent some time validating the research that I did, verifying that my research was correct, and then they were responsible for making the change based on the updated research.
It was suggested that a separate software program, not the company you work for, Cellbrite, but Axiom, reflects this search as deleted. That's not entirely accurate, is it?
Objection, Your Honor. Sustained as to form.
Running an Axiom program, would it reflect this search as deleted?
Yes, and it is a deleted search.
Does it have a label on it?
It does.
Is that carved?
Yes, it would be.
Now, are you familiar with the Axiom Artifact Reference Guide when it talks about the dangers of relying on the timestamp?
I'm not familiar with it referencing dangers, but I'm aware of the document.
Are you aware of the reference guide when it talks about Safari suspended state tabs?
Yes.
And offers that since these are local tab states, results from this artifact may contain an earlier date and time compared to the results in the Safari history artifact if iCloud Safari synchronization?
Objection, Your Honor. Sustained.
Are you aware of the reference guide?
I am.
Are you aware that it cautions that a timestamp can be misinterpreted?
Objection, Your Honor. Sustained.
Sir, when you came to your opinion that the search for how long to die in the cold at 6:23 and 6:24 in the morning of January 29, 2022, was the time that they were actually inputted, not 2:27. In forming your opinion, did you consider both Cellbrite and Axiom software?
I did.
Did you consider other tools as well?
Yes, my own.
And tell us a little bit about your own tool.
Again, this is a tool I've been writing for approximately 5 or 6 years now. Partially for fun, partially for research purposes. And it's a tool I make available to other examiners globally.
And sir, when you were trying to examine these searches that in your opinion were 6:23 and 6:24 a.m., did you ever try to test it yourself and actually take a phone so you could either prove or disprove to yourself that earlier timestamp didn't mean it was the time that it was searched?
Oh, definitely. Yes, that's the kind of thing I do all the time when verifying artifacts.
And in your opinion, is that helpful in understanding how a timestamp earlier could relate to a later search?
Exactly, very helpful.
Would you be willing to do a live demonstration for us on the screen and show us how that works?
Yes.
Okay. How long would that take?
Probably about 5 minutes.
Okay. Could you show us?
Of course.
Okay. All right, here on Live Impact News, you are watching Ian Whiffen take the stand there, getting ready to do a demo for the jury in the trial of Karen Read. He's going over the exams or the timeline for the examination. I should say, let me retract. He is going over the timeline and some of the calls made to from the victim's phone, O'Keefe's phone. So here on Live Impact News, you are watching Live Impact News on WCNC Plus, approaching 1 o'clock right now on Tuesday afternoon. And for Nick Sturdivant here on the stream, I want to take you back out to the Senate Veterans Mental Health hearing that is still taking place out of Washington, D.C. We'll bring you there now live on WCNC Plus.
Open for 5 legislative days. Should any committee members want to submit additional statements or questions for the record. And I'm going to ask all of our witnesses, if there are any questions, to please respond to them. Once again, thank you all for being here. This hearing is adjourned. Thank you.
Well, and it looks like that committee hearing is now done for the day. Senate hearing on mental health for veterans. I want to take you now to an interview that our Ben Thompson and Lisa Washington on this morning's newscast on WCNC Charlotte did with now the Mecklenburg County Democrats have a new chair. They did that interview live at 8 o'clock this morning. If you missed that, we're going to play that for you now here on Live Impact News on WCNC Plus.
Mecklenburg County Democrats have a new person in charge this morning. Wesley Harris was elected party chair this past weekend.
That's right. It comes after intense scrutiny over campaign spending during the 2024 election. In fact, the WCNC Charlotte investigation found local Democrats spent more than $100,000 just on an election night party, which was more than twice the cost of what they typically raise over an entire election cycle. Our Nate Morabito spoke to Harris at the time before he was elected party chair.
I think the last election cycle, I think our county party raised maybe $50,000, if that. And so the fact that we spent more than that on a watch party is upsetting, to say the least.
Joining us now live to talk more is Wesley Harris. Wesley, good to talk to you again, and congrats on the new position. First up, your predecessor at the time defended his work, saying that the party raised record cash on a local level and reached out to more voters than ever before. So why do you think you were elected instead?
I was elected because the results didn't bear that out. Mecklenburg once again lagged behind the state in terms of turnout, and there was just a lot of turmoil within the party and a lot of division within the party. That's to be expected even in the best times. But when you couple that with a very rough election cycle, while we had some bright spots on the statewide level, but North Carolina going once again for Donald Trump and our turnout lagging significantly in Mecklenburg County once again, it just kind of boiled everything to the surface, where they said, if we're going to move forward and rebuild the trust in our party, we're going to have new leadership. And that was really what the sense I got from the vast majority of the delegates that voted in the convention this weekend was, we've done some good things over the past 2 years, but we just need that new leadership to give us a reboot so that we can tackle this critically important midterm election coming up in 2026 with our best foot forward.
And you mentioned some of the division within the party. Members of the African American Caucus of Mecklenburg County have told us here at WCNC Charlotte that they felt disrespected by the former chair. How do you work to repair those relationships?
And that's the key issue. You know, we have to show up in the community. We have to engage with the community and the stakeholders and the leaders within that community. And I think that's something that we haven't particularly been great at. Because when you look at Mecklenburg County, we are an exceptionally diverse county, probably the most diverse county in the entire state. And when you look at kind of the role of the Democratic Party, there's two things. Really, it's just to elect Democrats. And on the local level, if you want to elect more Democrats, the focus is usually on the suburbs, which are typically wider and are typically more wealthy. And so focusing on those areas takes attention away from our base voters in the Crescent, mostly our African American voters, our more minority voters, our Hispanic voters. And so a lot of them feel like we haven't really focused on them as much, chasing that shiny object of trying to flip these suburban seats. But on a statewide level, when you're looking at statewide races, every single vote in Mecklenburg County matters, and we have to get our key demographics out, our key voters out in all parts of the county. And so to do that, you have to have a presence in every single corner of Charlotte, every single corner of Mecklenburg County, showing people what Democrats stand for, how they're fighting for their communities, how they're standing up for them. And that's all about building relationships. It's all about showing up, it's talking to folks. And that is really going to be our critical focus over these next 2 years, to just be everywhere and show people we're not there for your votes. We're there for you. We're there for the community. We're going to show you that Democrats are the party that believes in you. We believe in investing in our communities. We believe in providing opportunities to everyone. And I think if we start doing that, we can build back that trust. We can build back those relationships. And I think the electoral results are going to show that.
You know, Mecklenburg highlighted as one of the most important counties in the entire country in last year's election. But as you mentioned, like 2020, turnout here was disappointing to national Democrats. Some going as far as to say Mecklenburg County Democrats were responsible for losing North Carolina 2 election terms in a row. Is that fair?
In a way, but then not really. I mean, while there's over 300,000 Democrats in North Carolina, again, it's not like if you compare North Carolina to, say, Georgia, you know, Atlanta is 60% of Georgia. And so how Atlanta goes, Georgia goes. North Carolina is much different. We have more rural voters than any state other than Texas. And while Atlanta is 60% of Georgia, you add up our top 8 counties. You know, Buncombe County, Mecklenburg County, Forsyth, where Winston is, Guilford, where Greensboro is, Durham, Wake, Cumberland County, where Fayetteville is, New Hanover County, all those together, it's only 40% of our state. And so while Charlotte is critical, if we don't get our turnout up, it's going to be very hard for Democrats to win statewide. It's not the entire margin. Because I think, you know, Kamala lost by about 250,000 votes, give or take, in North Carolina. And so you can't make that up just in Mecklenburg County, even if we had just sky high turnout. But it is a critical piece. If we do not do our job in Mecklenburg, it makes it so much harder on the state. And really, you saw that. We had 5 Democrats elected statewide in North Carolina. In order for that to happen, they had to outspend their opponents 3-1 and run against some of the worst candidates to ever seek public office, if we're being honest. And so that shows you that Democrats can win if we have a good message, if we have money, especially for running against bad candidates. But it also shows that if our party actually does its job, gets up our floor, gets out our base voters, then we can really transform what statewide races look like in North Carolina and trend our state much more in a solidly blue direction.
So we know that North Carolina is a swing state. So for Democrats to win North Carolina, is it more on the Democratic Party backing the candidate, or is it just choosing the candidates, the right candidates for the Democratic Party to win?
It's a little bit of both. You know, I think one of the problems that we have is when you nationalize things, the message gets drowned out. And like I said, North Carolina is a very geographically diverse state. We're a very economically diverse state. And so 2 things really have to happen for Democrats to really be able to take control in North Carolina. We have to, A, get out our base voters more in our heavy urban centers, but then we also need to expand the map. And those require a couple things. Those require the right kind of candidate who can have that North Carolina message. You know, North Carolina has always had a history of those populist roots going back to the early 20th century of, you know, we were a leader in public education in this country. We transformed our state from, they used to call us the Rip Van Winkle state. We were the state that fell asleep and couldn't wake up again. But visionary Democratic governors invested in our people, invested in our infrastructure, and transformed our state to what we have today, in a leader in finance, and a leader in healthcare, and a leader in education. And so we have the track record to show people what Democrats have done for North Carolina. We just have to go out there and show people that and tell people that, particularly looking at what's happened in the General Assembly the past couple of years and this fiscal cliff that we're approaching on of not able to make those investments due to Republican leadership. And so it's finding the right kind of candidate who can go out and make those messages, make that economic message to the urban parts of North Carolina, the rural parts of North Carolina, the coast, the mountains. But then here in Mecklenburg County, we got to get our base voters out. We are a Democratic county. We have a supermajority on the city council. We've swept the county commission. And so we run the show here. And so we got to go out and show people why us running the show is benefiting their lives, why it's better to live in Mecklenburg County than Union County, than Gaston County, than Iredell County. We got to show how we are delivering for the voters and give them the receipts so they will come back and support us, and more often, and most importantly, come out and vote for us.
You mentioned the local races, and in fact, yes, we have a midterm next year, but we have city races this fall, so I want to get you on the record and put you on the spot on a few of these. Do you support the transit plan referendum coming up?
We'll have to see what the final version looks like. I know the House has one version and the Senate has one version, but you know, the future of Charlotte's growth and Mecklenburg County growth and our entire regional growth is going to depend on having investment in transit. And what that final plan looks like, I think we are going to have to make those investments, because that is one of the only ways we're going to be able to handle our growth. Because if we want affordable housing, we're going to need to build more. And if we're going to build more, we need to show people that we're going to have the infrastructure so that traffic doesn't go crazy, so that people's daily lives aren't going to get impacted by that. And one of the best ways to do that is having a reliable transit plan that people can believe in. And so I think it is absolutely critical that we invest in this transit. And I hope that I know our city elected officials and our state elected officials are working with the Republican General Assembly leaders to make sure that we have a fair plan for Mecklenburg County. But we got to make sure that those investments are going in the areas we want them to go to. But I fully agree that we need to make these investments in transit. We just got to make sure the plan is something that works for not only Charlotte, but the entire region.
All right, very quickly, we know that Tariq Bokhari's District 6 seat is open now in Charlotte. Democrats have been close to getting this one. Who do you plan to run? Can you tell us that?
I don't know that yet. You know, we haven't even had filing, haven't even had a primary. And so it's certainly going to be a big target. Like I said, it's one where our state legislative districts in that area are consistently blue. The presidential results are consistently blue in that area, and municipals, we haven't been able to get over the finish line. But we are talking to a handful of folks, and I look forward for us running a really great candidate and hopefully being able to get that seat this November.
Stephanie Hand just got a few hundred votes away from it just a few years ago. You expect the mayor to run again?
I don't know. You know, I've had a few conversations with her. She's keeping it pretty close to her chest. But I'd assume that decision will probably be coming fairly shortly. So we will see. No inside information from me. I'm sorry to say.
That's fair. Still fresh in the job. All right, Wesley Harris, new chair of the Mecklenburg County Democrats, former state lawmaker as well. Wesley, thanks for coming on. Good to talk to you.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Great to talk to y'all.
And that was Wesley Chair talking to our Ben Thompson and Lisa Washington on this morning's newscast and on WCNC Plus as well. All right, well, today is a somber date, as it is 1 year since 4 officers were killed in an officer ambush at a house in East Charlotte. I spoke to our Nate Morabito. Both he and I were involved in the coverage that day, as I pretty much took on the desk duties and trying to anchor breaking news while it was happening. So at that time, it was really early on, and we were getting those details, just a detail here and there. So things were a little in flux, actually a lot in flux, for much of the afternoon. And pretty much we covered it until 7 o'clock that night. We did have our Nate Morabito looking into so many aspects of what that was, who were involved, the agencies, the homes involved. And as part of our coverage today, we spoke and just reflected on what happened 1 year ago today. So we're going to run this interview. This happened this morning on Live Impact News. We're airing it again here on WCNC Plus. Nate Morabito now here joining us in the Live Impact studio. And Nate, we were both covering that fateful day a year ago. And I remember just having to get to the studio before 2 o'clock and then thinking we didn't have much information, but then having to come back, and then it was what we call wall-to-wall coverage, and it was for the next 5 hours sitting there in the studio as details were slowly coming in and then bringing you in with all of the updates.
Yeah, I remember that afternoon, the newsroom can be a loud place at times, but it also can be really quiet. And I remember our assignment desk manager saying something about officers down. Mm-hmm. And you immediately think, this is not good.
Right.
And if you remember on that day, very early on, there was some misinformation about where this happened, which really slowed everything down for the news gathering purposes. Like, there was a time when the assignment desk was trying to figure out where is the actual location of the shooting, right? And one of the biggest things that I push just through my many years in this business and from my mentors who have taught me this, there is no rush to get out information from our perspective, especially in this kind of sensitive information situation. Rather, we are trying to be very methodical and make sure we're right before we release this. I had received some information early on that this was going to be a terrible afternoon. And there was just no rush to get that on the news, because what if that information is wrong, right?
Right.
And you want to make sure families are notified early on. But as that afternoon continued moving, it was pretty clear when all the different hospitals were on standby, when roads were getting closed down, that this was turning into something that was going to be the worst day for law enforcement in our city's history. And it was really tough, because you start thinking, well, what can we do to try right now to get information out to the public, right? And I think in a lot of times in these tragedies, we're concerned with the number, right? It is school shooting, God forbid. How many people, how many officers, right? And instead of going that route early on, I started looking up the neighborhood where this happened and tried to start calling neighbors there. And I did make contact with several people who lived in that neighborhood, maybe who worked nearby, to just get a sense of how tense it was out there. Was this an active scene? Because that's information we can share to the public.
Right.
It's not about how many.
No, it's a
people are
public
affected.
safety issue.
Exactly. We're sharing critical information to the public right then and there. The end result will be the end result. We'll get that information. And that's what I mean when there's not really a rush to get numbers and names on there. We're trying to get the information that the public needs right then and there.
Right.
Which is, what is the current situation? I remember Richard Devane, who was out there, one of our reporters, made contact with someone who had video or an image of that happening. I started communicating with that person, and we were able to get an image on TV fairly quickly about what it looked like there.
Right.
We had a drone operator out there, but he couldn't get a drone up at the time, right?
Yeah, we had a lot of restrictions.
Exactly.
The area that was cordoned off, I suppose,
They had a
just getting
command
bigger
center.
and bigger.
Right, that was kind of far away. So it's really hard to get eyes on the situation. And I think that's why it's so important. I was here in the newsroom still. You kind of have to have people here still, not just the people that go on air and deliver the news, but initially gathering the news, so that we can make phone calls, so that we can see a map, so that I can look at property records to see who the owners are, so I can try to find their phone numbers. We went through all of that process the day of. And I remember as we started kind of getting ready to go on the news, for my role in this, it was kind of eerie just how the last time a couple officers were killed here in Charlotte was like a mile or two away from this exact scene.
Interesting.
So it's just such a sad day. And I remember in the days after, you know, early on I was very focused on who the shooter was and kind of uncovering his record a bit and if the justice system failed these officers that day. But then I watched the funerals that were published, particularly the CMPD officer's funeral. I just remember listening to his widow's words and being they were so powerful, and I was just struck at how strong she was in that moment to deliver that. And I think that we saw a lot of that, right? Thomas Weeks' wife later talked to our Sarah French at the time, and just seeing her strength to kind of deal with this terrible situation. Yeah, I mean, just a horrible situation, the worst possible situation. And then you see, you know, at his funeral, these people that are speaking, you know, just with great stories. These are human beings who went to work that day, had a job to do. I can't imagine that they thought this to this level could happen. I'm sure they prepared for a situation where things could go sideways. But this amount of death and injuries, particularly when you have a shooter who was up high in the house, who was clearly not surprised by their arrival. That's a problem when you're trying to serve a warrant on a fugitive. You want to catch them by surprise. They really didn't have a ton of time to react. And I remember, you know, sadly having to watch some video of these officers that were kind of trying to protect themselves from a bit of a distance away. Some were on a fence, some were in a carport, and you could see bullets going by. And I just can't even imagine being in that situation. And then, you know, their fellow officers are there trying to help, and they don't really know the full extent of this either. There is some radio traffic that's kind of painting a picture for them. But, you know, at one point they thought there was a second shooter because of, remember that?
The uncertainty of where the bullets were coming from.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I mean, it was so complex. And even a year later, we really don't know exactly what happened. We have an idea. If you remember, the body camera from this incident wasn't released. That's kind of the one thing that, although difficult for us to watch and then make decisions about what to release, if anything, that would have helped piece together some of this from the public's perspective. But even in the weeks after, you know, number one, I looked at federal funding and warning signs that the Marshal Service had given members of Congress about this kind of thing potentially happening. We found some federal audits that kind of raised questions about training in the past for the task force officers. Remember, this was a task force that was serving a warrant. And you start also looking at the system, the institution, right? Not so much about individual decisions that day, but the system that brought those officers there that day. We talked to several different experts who even still today wonder, why did they serve the warrant on that day in the afternoon?
Right, that was a question that popped up almost immediately.
Right, it just, for some people, it seemed odd. But, you know, then we talked to those experts and they say, I mean, if you get a tip that this person is there right now at this location, you go with it. Because if you don't go right away, they may be gone. And maybe this was their window. Those are the questions that we don't really know. I'm sure there are people that do know that information, and I'm not sure it will ever really be public. But part of our job has been trying to figure out, well, what were the lessons learned? Because I don't know if you remember, but early on, he's now retired, but the director of the Marshal Service said, we're going to learn from this. We're going to try to take a real hard look. We know the risk is getting greater. We're going to try to figure out what we can do better to prevent this in this future. So, you know, I'd covered a couple of different stories after we can talk about in a minute, but one of my main projects was trying to figure out, well, what is the status of this internal review? What is changing because of this? And I made some what we call Freedom of Information Act requests. These are requests that anybody in the public can make to their government, and I did this to the U.S. Marshal Service just to try to get an idea, like this after-action review, which they call, where does it stand? Is it done? What is changing because of this? And this is a document that I received. It's the only documents that I got, actually, and I think they sent it to me in September, yeah.
Okay.
This was.
How long did it take to
September.
receive those?
I mean, they did a pretty good job, maybe
Okay.
a couple months, maybe less than that. They've
Oh,
been
it's
pretty
not
good.
bad considering.
Yeah, I mean, the Marshal Service really has been great to work with in this situation, considering the terrible tragedy it's been. I mean,
Right.
if you think about early on, too, I'm doing stories about how they warned about this, how their training was an issue before, you know, and they've been really respectful of our reporting, knowing that
Okay.
this is our job, is to ask these questions, is to be skeptical. You can, and I think I said this on the air, you can be both respectful and revere these officers and honor their sacrifice, and at the same time, ask the questions that this kind of situation demands, because we don't want this to happen again.
No.
So anyways, these records here were interesting because it showed that in July, the survivors of this shooting went to a training facility in Georgia and met with the Marshal Service and explained what equipment immediately they think could help improve safety. Now you'll see it's redacted here. That's not uncommon. This is confidential. This is sensitive. You don't want to give criminals the upper hand against law enforcement. So we knew that at least there were some recommendations early on taking place. But, you know, also we had a change in administration at the president level, right? So you have also people in positions that change. I mentioned the director of the Marshal Service has since retired. So this after-action review the federal government had started is not done yet. I mean, it's been a full year, and let's be real here, this was an incredibly complicated shooting, an unusually high number of people that were killed that day, and you had a change in administration. This is still going through the process, and this after-action review is going to look at what worked, what didn't work, what they could do better in the future. And here we are a year later. We still
Yeah.
don't know that.
Now, you like you said, you've done many stories, had a revisit with each one. You also talked to Congressman Mark Harris. What was that conversation? Why go to him, and what was that conversation
Yeah, so
like?
Congressman Mark Harris, he's a freshman representative, and he's on the House Judiciary Committee. That is a really powerful committee when it comes to oversight over the U.S. Marshal Service. So he really has a stake in kind of holding that agency accountable, particularly when it comes to funding in the future, number one. Number two, he has signed on to a couple of bills meant to, as he would say, back the blue, better protect law enforcement. He also represents part of Charlotte and the surrounding area. And so we wanted to talk with him about what his expectation is moving forward. And here's what he told us.
It's what you can learn from it. If there were mistakes that were made, you learn. If there's more information that could have been available, try to see how you can get that more information available, so where everybody has the data, everybody knows what they're walking into.
Yeah, important, right? You know what history tells you you might walk into. Through our reporting for a story that's going to air tonight at 5:30, we interviewed a former chief of staff for the U.S. Marshal Service and a former marshal. His name's Art Roderick. He knows what these officers went through to some degree because he was involved in a deadly firefight back in the 90s. I don't know if you remember hearing about Ruby Ridge in Idaho.
Yeah.
It was very well known at
Yes.
the time, kind of infamous actually on a lot of fronts. And his partner was shot and killed. And he knows what happens in those situations. He refused to leave his colleague there. He said, they ordered me off the mountain, I wouldn't go. I didn't leave till the next day. I wanted to make sure that we could get his body off the mountain.
Yeah.
He also knows the importance of learning from this kind of a situation and how critical it is to, you can never, and multiple experts have told us, you can never get comfortable in these situations. You always have to be on your toes and be prepared for things to go sideways.
Right. My husband always likes to say, head on a swivel.
Yeah, firefighter, right?
Firefighter. So yeah, and as a spouse of a first responder, that same idea you talked about, you know, you might be prepared. Chances are you're going to come home at the end of your shift, but there is that very small chance that you might not. And you know, something in the back of the mind, but you can't let that rule your existence and vocation, right?
Yeah, I just want to point this out too. I'm really proud of how we handled this situation as a news organization too, because we have been so sensitive. We have tried to be so sensitive in every aspect of our reporting to respect the families of those fallen,
Right.
to respect the survivors, to also respect the viewers and the public that demand a safer world to live in.
Yeah, I mean, and back in the day, or some organizations still, they just want to get the news out there fast and furious to be the first to report it. Many times it's not right, but we will be sensitive to the people involved and make sure we have confirmed and verified things. But something like this, too, is very fluid. And I just remember being there on the desk and just thinking that this is, we have very little information to go by, and I'm just kind of flying by the seat of my pants. We are trying to get our crews into place out there, but like you said, it was hard to get to the scene. It's hard to show what folks are doing and operating without giving tactics away, and be sensitive to the actual police operation, because that is still an ongoing, an active situation. So, yeah, just that day was tough, not only for us media folks, but really everyone, neighbors, people who just were not knowing what to do when they were caught in the jam up. We talked to Kaylin Hagwood yesterday, and she, in the days following, would talk about the mental health aspect, because it was so intense. That day, the next couple of days, you having to revisit a different angle, uncovering something else, which is still ongoing, evidently. What is that like for you, having to kind of dip in and out of that sort of story?
Yeah, I mean, so you never really forget about it, number one. This is always in the back of my mind, what happened there, and what other questions haven't we asked. There was a time when I had to listen to the scanner traffic, which was very difficult to hear. I mean, we didn't know which officers survived, which didn't. But there were very graphic things described about how to try to get these officers out and get them to the hospital, and I found that to be very difficult. And even when we put together our story, we altered voices on the scanner because we didn't want one of the fallen officers' voices to be on there. We wouldn't know that unless they said it.
Wow.
So that was really challenging. And I heard the woman that was in the house. Remember, there was a woman and her daughter in there.
Oh, right.
You could hear that phone call and the tense situation. Remember, they interviewed her initially. They thought maybe she was a suspect, and then they let her go. And you're thinking to yourself, my goodness, you're trapped in a home with a person who is shooting at police. They're shooting back. I mean, I'm just thinking about, there's a kid in the home. I mean,
all kinds.
It's a lot. And again, there were a few months there after where I received a tip about a situation involving a handful of CMPD officers who essentially decided to end their workday that day as it started happening. I don't know if you remember that. They logged off the computer. They basically became unavailable to respond, and their colleagues were upset about that, because in this kind of situation, you always hear, we run toward the danger, we don't run away. And we were so careful and so delicate and so sensitive and trying to be really fair to the truth of what happened there. The majority of officers absolutely were heroes that day. They ran out there, they did what they could to save, and hearing the scanner traffic, I know that because I heard it. But at the same time, making sure those that didn't do that, if they violated policy, are held accountable in some way. Because if those officers, the idea was from their colleagues, if they're not going to respond to their own officers getting shot at, what will they do for the general public? And that was a very challenging story to tell, because we were trying to be respectful and sensitive and not paint a picture like all officers did this, but at the same time hold the police department accountable. And I remember the police department, their spokespeople, kind of were really trying to not get us to air the story, essentially. And I made an effort to go to a press conference, did not put a camera in anyone's face, which I could have done. I didn't want to do that, but I wanted to be really clear about, we're trying to be fair and trying to really understand so that we can be accurate in our reporting. So, it's just that. It's the whole, trying to be respectful, but also trying to ask the questions that matter. And I do think that we've kind of missed that a little bit in the year that's come after this. There was the DA's review remember the officer involved trying to decide if the use of force was
Oh, yes,
okay.
right.
And Spencer Merriweather published his report and found, no issue there. But there's so much unanswered, and from a public's perspective, I can understand why some will never be released because they are sensitive information. But there is a need for, I think, some reassurance that we're going to continue to improve and be better. And I mean, if you remember, CMPD kind of got embroiled in this little bit of a public debate about the outer carrier vests.
Oh, yeah.
Remember? That was
Yeah,
that was kind
that's-
of in the aftermath of this. Should patrol officers be allowed to wear these? You can put extra armor in them. They have certain hooks that can help you pull people out quickly. And in the end, the chief agreed to let it happen, but it was really like
was a
this
bit of a struggle.
for a while. It kind of rose to the city council level. So we know that's changed. We know the city of Charlotte did not do an after-action review. That's what CMPD tells me in this case, or at least published one. We know they had several debriefs on this issue. Again, I imagine they have changed some things because of it, but they're not publicizing what that is. It's just important to ask those questions on the same day that we're honoring the lives of those officers who are no longer with us. We want to, in their name, make sure that people just like them are protected moving forward. And so it can be uncomfortable, but that is the job, at least for me, that I do at this TV station. And all of us have a critical role in making sure this story is told completely. Right? And I remember
Yes.
you and all of our anchors and reports just being so calm that day, which is also really, really critical. At some point, when I found out how many officers were at that point likely dead, your kind of heart starts racing a bit. It'd be very hard to immediately go on and try to report that to people. You do such a good job in a calm way to not, I guess, lessen the severity or impact of it, but also not be in a way that's kind of jumpy and, you know what I mean, that can kind of make everybody's nerves. Because, when you're an anchor, you kind of trickle down to the rest of the newsroom.
Sure.
And our job is to be as calm as possible in that moment to try to get the news out.
Appreciate that. Yeah, it's one of those, because everything was unknown, we are to lead with the voice of calm, hopefully, as this was a public safety issue, a lot of unknowns, and the team and that we are in the newsroom, it is more than just the people in the studio and the reporters out there in the field. So trying to get the information timely, accurately. But I do remember one viewer in the days after said, saw you guys, I felt like I didn't have to, and I didn't change the channel because everyone was really honing in on what was happening, and they felt that our coverage was complete and gave them what they wanted and needed from all their questions and the curiosity and concerns for their neighbors.
What I also love, too, that we covered and we showed the funerals that were public.
Yes.
We decided to do that as a station, which I think was so important because they were so full to begin with. And I was hanging on every word that was said there because
Right.
They were so powerful. And you want to really, I think it's hard in this business, especially when things happen, having covered many tragedies, you're so in your job there that you cannot emotionally fully understand what's going on.
Yeah.
And so I really made it a point to watch as much of those as I could so that I could be touched emotionally and not forget the severity of what happened, so I can remove myself from the job and be 100% a person as I listened to that. And I remember
Good point.
getting emotional and tearing up just listening to one of the widows speak. It's just so hard, but important that we don't lose sight of that. This isn't a
Right.
news story. This is real life.
Yeah, these are people. We might not know them, but we know them. We know their story, a connection, a family.
Yeah.
Okay, Nate Morabito. Thank you. What a look back, Thank you for your take on that and important work that you continue
All
to
of
do.
us do it. Yep.
All right. 1 year later, today, 5:30 p.m., 4 officers, a year ago, killed in an ambush in East Charlotte. At 5:30, we're going to take a look at the day and things that Nate touched upon. What has changed, the questions we still have, and where we need to go. And that was a replay of this morning's interview with Nate Morbido in studio here, just looking back at the ambush 1 year ago today. Again, 5:30 today is when that special will take place in WCNC Plus. That's what you are watching right now. Live Impact News at 1:32 Tuesday afternoon. Jane Monreal in for Nick Sturdivant, who is off today. Want to take you out to the state. North Carolina state leaders are in a House Judiciary Committee this afternoon. Their session right now, they're weighing about 45 bills. We're not going to go through all of them. We're going to catch them in the middle here. But it looks like they're in the middle of House Bill 781, talking about unauthorized public camping and sleeping. Let's take you out there now, live on Impact News on WCNC Plus.
Kill people. We have another word for sanctioned encampments. Those are concentration camps. If you really wanted to help homeless people, then you would help to unlock the 27 empty homes for every homeless person. You would help us get Medicaid for every person. You would raise the minimum wage so we could afford the sky-high rent that the corporations in North Carolina are holding hostage. This bill will kill the Hurricane Helene victims that have still not gotten help by FEMA or the state. This bill will kill veterans that serve our country. Please do not let this bill pass. Thank you.
Thank you. Randy Blair. Randy Blair. Mr. Blair?
All right.
You have 1 minute.
Hello, my name is Randy Blair. I'm not like affiliated with any organizations or anything. I'm just one of those guys from the bottom up. I really like I couldn't really hear. I had my headset on, but I just want to reiterate the point. Like, it's a lot of rundown buildings that people own that, you know, could be utilized if you really want to help this situation. Is the answer isn't confined or boxed in, but it's supposed to be free. And the things that are holding some people down are the fact that, yeah, we only work for crumbs, and we have to save and hold on to what little bit we get just to end up paying somebody else at the end of the month. And that's just to be able to say, I have a home. Sometimes things happen. You know, you lose a job, you get hurt, and those adversely affect you. And the way things are set up now, if you don't have a set amount of money at the end of a month, you can at any given time be put out or thank you. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you. Sasha Batts. Sasha Batts. I think she had been outside. Nope. And we have Latoya Agard. Latoya Agard, you'll come up.
Thank you so much. Today I have graphics for each person on the committee. It should be focused on your particular area that you serve. Please take one off the top and pass it down the line. Your name is in the bottom right-hand corner. This information is also being given to the press. I'm also glad today that the Cicero Institute has finally revealed itself as the sponsor and lobbyist for this bill. The Cicero Institute has been founded by a billionaire who is outside of our state. They have provided the template for this bill in other states around the country as an opposition to Housing First, which is documented and clearly has evidence that it does work when it is funded properly. This bill does not take into account the issue that there is not enough affordable housing. As homelessness has increased, as the number of people who are unsheltered has increased, our affordable housing availability has decreased. And that is why we see so many people in this need. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Do we have someone else prepared to speak? Okay. All right. I just have one question. There's a Reverend G. Kevin Baker. Yes. Mr. Baker, you wanted to speak on Senate Bill 724. That's not in this committee. 781. Okay. You've got a minute.
My name is Reverend Kevin Baker, lead pastor of Eden Street United Methodist Church in downtown Raleigh. I'm here speaking on behalf of Bishop Connie Mitchell Shelton, which is the Episcopal leader for the eastern part of our state, 433 churches, 56 counties on the eastern part of the state. I rise in opposition to this bill. Mainly because it's not solution-based. We do have a affordable housing crisis. The local governments and nonprofit agencies across the state are already effectively addressing homelessness using the Housing First model, which was bipartisan. It came under the Bush administration. We need to lean into solutions and not kind of kick the can down the road or to other municipalities and counties that have more resources and they kind of flood to those. Even in Representative Miller's district, after prioritizing most chronic cases, the Cape Fear Continuum of Care documented returns to homelessness 1 out of 10. So there's a very high success rate there in that area. So we have solutions here. We need to lean into those, and I would ask that you reject this bill.
Thank you. I didn't see anybody else signed up to, I'm sorry, what's your name?
Otto Harris.
Did you sign up, Mr. Harris?
I did, yes.
You did? I'm not finding your name. That's why I'm. Mr. Harris, if you go ahead and speak, then I'll find your name. Otto Harris?
Yes.
All right, if you'll tell us any group that you're with?
Okay, Otto Harris, speaking on behalf of Bishop Ken Carter's office, Western North Carolina, representing the Western 44 counties in the state. And I rise to speak in opposition to the bill. Beginning with the question, how can we push down folks who are already down? It seems like it's impossible, but this bill has figured it out. Some of the most vulnerable and impoverished citizens find themselves in harm's way with potential penalties, fines, court dates, blemishes on their records, which will further stigmatize and criminalize and dehumanize them. 86% of North Carolina voters believe that homelessness cannot be resolved by using law enforcement resources to ticket, fine, and arrest people for being without housing, especially when there's not enough affordable housing to go around. There are 66 affordable housing units to every 100 households, making below half of the area median wage in North Carolina. For example, in Representative Stevens' district, it takes an hourly wage of more than $16 to afford housing.
Thank you for your comments. Thank you for your comments. That is all the speakers I show signed up, and I'm sorry if we skipped you, Representative Mr. Harris. Further committee discussion, Representative Budd.
I want to first state that homelessness is a very knotty problem. There's no one-size-fits-all solution. There are people with mental illness, substance abuse disorders, people who simply prefer to live on the street. I have met some of those in some of my volunteer capacities. There is no one-size-fits-all. And I will say the first thing about this bill is it doesn't criminalize homelessness, which I appreciate. Not sure about the homeless guy paying the civil penalties, but I do appreciate no criminality. I have a good friend some number of years ago who served in the military for 20 years as an MP, came back, joined local law enforcement, and at a barbecue he asked me, he said, "You noticed anything different about our streets lately?" And I was, kind of questioning. He says, "There are no homeless people." Well, Charlotte was getting ready to host a big event, and they wanted the city to look good. And so they had moved those people who didn't have housing. They had kind of pushed them south, east, west, and north out of the city so it didn't look as if we had a homeless problem. And when I asked about that, he said, well, it makes people very uncomfortable. It doesn't smell good. They're in the way. They urinate in public. And again, he wasn't trying to be disparaging. He was just simply pointing out that these are some of the facts that exist. And I said, you have a point. And I said, but what's the solution? He said, we don't know, we don't have it. And he was law enforcement. I will also say with the wage issue, when I say there's not a one-size-fits-all, if you make $7.25 an hour, which is the legal minimum wage, and you work 40 hours a week and you take no time off, you work 52 weeks in the year, you make $15,080 before taxes. You do that for 2 jobs, you're at $30,160. So when we talk about solutions for homeless people, we need to not just be talking about affordable housing, we need to speak in real dollars, which is if you're working 2 40-hour-a-week jobs, that's 80 hours a week before taxes, and you still can't pay rent. Substance abuse disorders, we've talked about that at length here in this committee, how we want to treat those, how we'd like to have a more humane approach. So while I understand the bill's purpose, I'm not sure it solves a problem. And so the one suggestion I've got for a friendly amendment, if you're willing to consider it later, is if you're living in your car, if it has to be insured and located in a place where it may be lawfully parked and registered, that may pose a problem for someone who does not make enough money to afford any kind of housing. So.
Okay, thank you. Any further discussion or comments? Representative Liu.
A question for the bill sponsor.
Okay, you yield.
Yeah. Could you share which municipalities request this bill? Are they the municipalities in urban counties, or what are the?
Well, my district, I've had many people I've talked to in my district and outside my district, and this is something where, honestly, when speaking to law enforcement, city managers, there's so much gray area. They're just trying to get some continuity about how to handle it, and definitely not trying to demonize homeless people. Basically, some of this gives them dignity, making sure that they have sanitary restrooms and things like that if they want to designate a spot for a year. But it's been multiple municipalities, and it's not demonizing homelessness. They're just trying to figure out how do we handle it, just like what Representative Budd said. How do we figure this out? I think this is a good start. We'll definitely talk. We'll talk and move forward, but we're not trying to demonize. We're just trying to get a solution.
Yeah, and I appreciate that, and I encourage the bill sponsors.
You want to follow up?
Yeah, follow up. Yeah, I appreciate your intent to address the homeless issue, but I encourage the bill sponsors to look into ways to help the homeless population and engage a wide range of municipalities who want, to be in this conversation, see how we can address the homelessness. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Representative Budd.
A quick follow-up question, which is for purposes of designating a spot and the sanitation issues that have come up that Representative Liu mentioned, I think you had mentioned as well, Representative Biggs. Why is there no funding provision in this to assist the municipalities in addressing the homeless issue to the extent that this bill could possibly provide some solutions for some people who are unhoused?
Well, yeah. Thank you for the question, and we're looking at different things, and I've looked at that also, but right now there's an adverse funding because there's a lot of things with cleanup and things like that happens right now, and it may be more beneficial, and we can look at analysis as we go forward of having the city pick a spot. Here's what we can do. I know I saw in Greensboro, which is a neighboring city to me, they're looking at doing something. They actually took a hotel and redid it for temporary housing. There's ways people are doing things that actually may end up being more cost effective than actually going in and bulldozing trees and doing cleanup. It may be more cost effective. So I'm open to conversation. I think it's a good bill. I think it's got the right intent. We don't want to paint it as a bad intent. And just for the record, I did this bill in my office, me and my LA. No one came to me with this bill. I came up with this bill, and we got bill drafting to do this bill. Thank you.
Further discussion or debate among the committee? If not, I'll entertain a motion. Representative Purtle. I didn't even have to wake you up.
Motion for a favorable report to House Bill 781, referral to state and local government.
All right, you've heard the motion. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, no. The ayes have it, and the bill will be so reported. Thank you. Now we're going to move, and I'm trying to do the ones that have the fewest speakers first. That's the performance measure I've been using. So we now have House Bill 690, Representative Jackson. Citizen Support Act. There's a PCS, and without objection, the PCS is before us. Representative Jackson.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman, committee members. Bill aims to ensure that state-funded benefits, housing assistance, higher education enrollment, and unemployment benefits in North Carolina are provided only to U.S. citizens and non-citizens who are legally authorized to reside in the United States to the extent permitted by federal law. The bill stipulates that multiple state agencies should verify the immigration status and/or take measures to prevent undocumented immigrants from accessing public services. I'm going to turn it over, if it's all right, Madam Chairwoman, to my...
Okay, excuse me. Representative Balcom.
Thank you, Ms. Chair.
This basically is why it's needed, is accountability for tax holders' dollars. This bill protects limited state resources, ensures the assistance is going to those illegal and eligible. Verification clarity, we have some gray areas and we want to be consistent. And then public trust is reinforced, and the confidence of this program goes to the lawful residents of North Carolina. Stand for any questions.
Further questions or comments by the committee? Representative Smith.
I just have a quick question around Section 9, the educational benefits purposes. I think, if I'm not mistaken, tuition is already something that considers status and lawful residency before offering any kind of in-state tuition. But the educational benefits purposes, does that include admission? Because if that does, admission to a state university, I think that would be a pretty that would be a large. I don't know that it does. It may not. And if it doesn't, could we just clarify that? Because I do think that might be that might have a larger impact potentially.
Let's defer to staff who's handling that. Ms. Griffiths.
Hi, Debbie Griffiths, Legislative Analysis. So Part 9 would apply to applicants for enrollment for the purpose of determining in-state tuition and financial aid eligibility, not actually being able to enroll.
You have a further question, Representative Smith?
So not for admission purposes.
Not for admission, but to in-state tuition determination and financial aid eligibility determination.
Sure. And just a quick follow-up. Is that different than what's already currently assessed or in law?
The community colleges and the UNC system would need to review what policies they have and make sure they comply with that.
Okay. Further discussions, Representative Luke.
I have a question for the bill sponsors.
Yeah, you may proceed.
So say if a patient is very ill and actually actively dying in front of a hospital, a state-funded hospital, so the doctors will have to check their immigration status to verify if they are legal residents or citizens before they render any treatments.
And I'm assuming you attend that as a question.
Yeah, that's a question.
All right.
Yeah.
Representative Balcom.
Okay, so food, emergency services, and life savings care are specifically exempt for protection under federal law and are not restricted by this bill.
Thank you.
We got a few people signed up to speak. Any other member of the committee have a question, comment, or concern? All right, seeing none, we've got Sammy Salkin. Sammy Salkin.
Hello, Sammy Salkin with the ACLU. Hostile legislation like House Bill 690 is an attack on our immigrant neighbors. Just like U.S. citizens, immigrants pay into our tax base and contribute billions of dollars each year, create jobs, and help fuel our economy. In North Carolina alone, undocumented immigrants contribute over $690 million in state and local taxes in 2022. However, the vast majority of public services, including transitional assistance for needy families, public housing, unemployment benefits, in-state tuition, and more, are already restricted to only U.S. citizens and people with lawful residency. Requiring public service agencies to take additional steps to verify the citizenship status of applicants will add an undue burden to already understaffed state agencies and slow down the provision of benefits to all beneficiaries. This bill is likely to also result in U.S. citizens having reduced access to essential services. Specifically, members of mixed status families might not make the distinction between an eligible beneficiary, such as a U.S.-born child, and an undocumented parent or sibling. This is likely to reduce benefit use among U.S. citizens and lawfully present immigrants. We urge you to vote no.
Thank you. We have Mark Swallow. Mark Swallow.
Hi, Mark Swallow with Democracy Out Loud. So this is not a citizen support bill, right? This is a bill that's meant to discourage the undocumented from coming to America. So let's just be honest about this, right? And it's meant for them to go home. Well, the trouble is that out of 1 million immigrants here in North Carolina, almost 35% are undocumented. And they work in construction, agriculture, administrative support, waste management, accommodation and food service, and manufacturing. So now we're going to lose a huge worker space by this type of legislation. They pay $772 million into state and local taxes, right? And they pay a significant portion to Social Security and Medicare that they cannot take advantage of. That's a huge gap that someone's going to have to take up. That's not going to be the citizen support. I tell you that right now. This pathological paranoia of undocumented hinges on social cleansing and to crushing our economy in North Carolina with the approval of this bill. Do not approve this bill.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments by the committee? Representative Budd.
I had a question for the bill sponsor.
Certainly.
When I read the bill, I also look at the facts, which is we have a lot of hybrid families. We have families where perhaps mom or dad is not documented, but the children are U.S. citizens. When I read this list of benefits, who is it that doesn't qualify when we talk about Medicaid? Who is it that doesn't qualify when we talk about inpatient hospital psychiatric services, which we just had a bill about, no camping, public camping, refugee assistance programs, that sort of thing. I want to know to whom this applies. Is it only apply to adults, or are we penalizing children as well?
We'll ask staff about that. Ms. Griffiths.
Debbie Griffiths, legislative analysis. Under the bill as it is written, it would only apply to non-citizens residing in the United States without legal permission. So if it was a hybrid family and the child was a U.S. citizen, it would not apply to the child.
Follow on?
Follow up.
How is a child supposed to apply for Medicaid, TANF, refugee assistance, foster care subsidies, child care subsidies, this entire list of programs? How is a child to apply?
All right, and I don't know if that was more of a rhetorical question, but of course the parents certainly have to apply. So it's really not a question that needs some answers.
Well,
it doesn't stop them from applying. It's the benefits for the citizen, not for the non-citizen. So that's why I viewed it sort of as a rhetorical question.
Okay. No, well, I see where you were coming from. I didn't mean it as a rhetorical question. I literally meant who applies? Because if mom can't apply because she's not documented, can she still sign paperwork for the minor children who may be U.S. citizens? And if that's the case, I would recommend that we amend to make that very clear, because the way this reads to me is that we are directly impacting children through no fault of their own are in the United States with an undocumented parent.
Thank you. Further questions, further discussions? Seeing none, I'll entertain a motion from Representative Miller.
This is a PCS, correct?
It is.
Motion for a favorable report to the PCS, unfavorable to the original, and referred to state and local government.
You've heard the motion. All those in favor will say aye. All those opposed, no. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes do have it. It'll be so reported. Thank you, members. House Bill 674, the Firearms Liberty Act, and it is a PCS, and without objection, the PCS is before us. Representative Adams, you are recognized, and Representative Edmonds.
Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Madam Chairman.
Okay, Firearms Liberty Act. What this proposes is a lifetime concealed carry license in addition to the existing license. And the way that works is today, if you want to get a concealed carry license, you make an application, there's a background check, there's an educational element, there's a training element, and you're issued a license. That license is renewed every 5 years. That license will remain intact, but there's also a provision for a lifetime license. The lifetime license goes through the same process, but as long as you're law-abiding, as long as you alert your sheriff to the fact that if you move, that license is permanent. The difference is with a renewable license, or what we call a fixed duration permit, you have privileges to purchase firearms at a point of purchase, and you also may have reciprocity in some states. The permanent license does not have those features, so it's only good in North Carolina. The second item is we deal with a domestic violence protective order. Today, if an individual is under a protective order, the sheriff will remove the person's firearms. Under the provision of this bill, the sheriff will store those firearms for 15 days with no charge, And at that point, the owner of the firearms can direct them to a federally licensed firearms dealer for storage or for sale. There is another feature which more or less makes this a bipartisan bill. This is a safety hold feature from Representative Charles Smith, and this is similar to the domestic violence provision in that the idea here is that if a person, for one reason or another, and in this particular case we were originally talking about, if a person is undergoing some type of emotional distress or whatever, his guns could be safely stored with a federally licensed firearms dealer. But this also applies to people, for instance, like people that are victims of Hurricane Helene, that may have a small gun collection that's in a house that is no longer accessible, and they may want to store their firearms with a federally licensed dealer. Or a person who's on a job assignment that takes them out of the country for a period of time. Rather than leaving them relatively unsecured in their house, they can store it with a federally licensed firearms dealer. Next item, it authorizes the storage and use of defensive devices and biometric safes for schools. This is simply affirming the fact that schools could have these devices, these storage devices, in their facilities. They have to be attached to the facility. They're biometrically accessed, so no one would know who has access to them and what's in them. They are authorized to have non-lethal devices like pepper spray, a taser if they're properly trained for it. But that's all we're doing is affirming the fact that they can do that, and it's more or less it's a deterrent. It offers the opportunity for schools to position these things in various places, and people would know that they're there, but they wouldn't know who had access to them or what was in them. Finally, the last item is to broaden a door lock exemption for certain businesses. This has to do with a law that sunset in January regarding the securing of gun shops. This solves a problem because they were unable to buy the fire codes to adequately secure their gun shops. And I'll stand for any questions.
All right. Thank you. Members of the committee, we have questions. We do have some people signed up to speak. So, questions? Representative Miller.
I just have one, Madam Chair. Thank you. Exactly where would the safes be installed? Would it be required to be installed in the office, or where would they be installed?
Well, from a deterrent standpoint, I mean, I would think that they would be positioned around the school, visible and maybe not visible. But the point is to get across the fact that the school does have devices that may store defensive elements, non-lethal, but it simply creates a deterrent effect. It's up to the imagination of the bad actors what might be in them or who might have access to them. They simply do have to be secured. They can't be loose.
Yes. Further questions? Further comments? Representative Budd.
I confess I've not read it in great detail, so pardon if I've missed it. A question for you, Representative, and that is where in here is any sort of directional guidance with when these weapons could be accessed and for what purpose they could be accessed and used?
You speaking of the school?
Yes.
The storage devices? Obviously, they would only be accessed if there was a threat. And the people that would have access to them would have to be previously screened for their ability to use the non-lethal devices that would be in them.
Follow on. Who defines what a threat is?
Hi, everyone. Jane Monreal here at 2 o'clock. You are watching Live Impact News on WCNC Plus. We're just pulling away there from state leaders, the General Assembly, as they are discussing now several bills. The latest one here live on House Bill 674, the Firearms Liberty Act. Well, today, if you have not heard, today is a time where it marks 1 year since 4 officers lost their lives in East Charlotte. And we are remembering the officers' ambush 1 year later today at 5:30 here on WCNC Plus. You can stream that on what you're watching right now. So if you haven't downloaded yet to maybe your phone, or you got to leave for a minute, do that. Otherwise, you can do it on your TV, Roku, Fire TV, and Apple TV. So it has been 1 year again since tragedy struck Charlotte when officers were killed in an ambush. And that day obviously left a mark on the city and community on Galway Drive where this all happened. We have WCNC Charlotte's Jessie Pierre live. She's joining us live now here on Live Impact News from the house in East Charlotte, outside of the home where it all took place, as we revisit things today. Jessie?
That's right, Jane. I'm standing right, and the house is right behind me over here. And like you mentioned, 1 year ago, this neighborhood was in complete chaos. And what started out as officers serving a warrant ended in gunfire here again at this house in this neighborhood, and also ended in heartbreak. Now, neighbors I spoke with remember hearing the gunfire and seeing the streets flooded with police, and then learning that four officers were killed. 12 months later, folks I spoke to say they do not forget. Now, the day is marked by the tragedy and loss, but also unity as they come together to heal. The community did hold a memorial, and they also have flowers added to the street signs in this Shannon Park neighborhood in honor of the fallen law enforcement members. Now, what's next with this house? Well, this all happened. Well, it has gone through many repairs. However, according to city inspectors, it is still not up to city code. In fact, just over a week ago, the homeowner was fined $6,500 in civil penalties and continues to rack up charges until the violations are fixed. Now, Charlotte Risk Management Office also confirmed more than $25,000 has been paid out to surrounding neighbors to cover damage caused during the ambush. Now, again, I spoke to some community members. This is a sad day. Again, they say that they continue to remember the fallen law enforcement members, and this is something that, is definitely leaving an impact on this community. Jane?
Thank you so much for showing us what it looks like today. And yeah, I mean, the impact and the feeling we have as a community, we still feel that today. Thanks for joining us here on the stream. We'll see you at 4 o'clock. Absolutely. On WCNC Charlotte. Take you back out here now in studio as we continue to follow the Karen Read trial. But again, as a reminder, the special is happening today at 5:30. Officers ambushed at 5:30 on WCNC Plus. So go ahead and download that app. Give you a second here as we take one last look at that. Okay. Took a peek there now at Boston, or just outside of Boston, where retrial for Karen Read has come back from lunch. This is Ian Whiffen, I understand his name is. He is the digital forensics expert. He's doing a demonstration on the Google search. There was an issue with the phone search on this trial. Let's go ahead and do this live now on Live Impact News on WCNC Plus.
Approximately 40 minutes apart.
And what does this show us? Can you explain the chart that goes along with that photograph that was shown to you?
So this chart is, or I should say, the map shows 5 of the records from this particular chart. But we can see that all of these records have a consecutive timestamp 1 second apart. The latitude and longitude is identical for all of these records, but at the same time, the accuracy drops from 43 meters to 7 meters within that same 8-second time period. The idea was to demonstrate that if you had one of these records on its own, if you only had the 43-meter accurate record, for example, then the phone could be anywhere within that 43-meter radius. But as time goes on, the accuracy is refined. The same central point is used by iOS, but we've now got an accuracy of 7 meters. And again, if we were to say that the phone is anywhere within that 7 meters, it's a much more accurate representation, according to the data, than the 43 meters would be. And with an 8-second time period, if the device was actually moving during that time, I wouldn't expect to see the latitude and longitude remain exactly the same. There'd be some degree of movement in the coordinates.
When you're producing location information in the circles that represent the location change, small, medium, large, at different times, does this chalk help represent that there can be changes in the location data, but the item can remain dormant?
So ask that differently, Mr. Brennan.
What is the exact point of the demonstration or this chalk? How does that help us understand the movement or the lack of movement of a cell phone?
I believe it demonstrates the fact that the phone is constantly refining the location data or the accuracy of the location data, even though it's using the same central point, the latitude and longitude, as the reference point. It doesn't necessarily mean the device had to move.
If I could go back to Exhibit 40, please. So looking at your photograph that you were asked about, there are two different circles, one dark and one light.
Yes.
And those circles are in different spots.
Yes.
Based on the chalk, or the chart you just showed us, are both of those different color circles consistent with a phone being in the same spot and not moving?
The previous chart that was shown only accounts for the white circles on this map. And it only shows the highest and the lowest accuracy. 20 minutes later, there was another similar scenario where there were multiple records with the same central GPS coordinates, but with different accuracy levels, and that's what was used for the black circles. Importantly, in my opinion, they all overlap, so it's possible that the device is somewhere in between those two circles for the duration of the time.
Now, finally, I want to turn back to the phone that was attributed to Jennifer McCabe. And you had shared with us your opinions about the time in which the searches at 623 and 624 were made.
Correct.
And I asked if you could just show us live, right now, how it works that a person can open a tab, and there's a timestamp, a time when it's open, and then make a later search but still retain the original timestamp.
Yes.
Is that something you can do for us?
It is, yeah.
Okay. With the court's permission, I'd ask Mr. Whiffen to give
Yes.
us a live demonstration of this.
Do you want the light off, Mr. Whiffen?
The light off would be better, thank you.
Okay, thank you, Dave.
Okay, first of all, I will highlight on the left side of the screen here, this is actually a live representation of what I have on a phone that's in front of me. So as I move this around, you can actually see on the screen that the screen refreshes. I'll also point out the iOS version here is 15.2.1, which matches that from Jennifer McCabe's phone. On the right side of the screen is the tool which I spoke about earlier, the one that I've been writing for several years. I make it available for free for any examiner who wants to download it and research primarily iOS devices. Here, you can see I've got a live connection to the device. So every file and folder that is on the device I can see within this directory view as you would normally see on a regular computer. And we can see the browserstate.db database. If I open that database up, you can see there are 4 tables, one of which is called tabs.
Mr. Whiffen, I hate to interrupt you. Can we make this larger? I know jurors earlier were hoping
I can try to
have a larger view of what's up there. Is that going to impact your demonstration in any way?
It shouldn't. I should be able to work around it, thank you.
Is that better for the jurors?
Okay, perfect.
Yes.
It's just a little closer.
Let me pull forward.
Thank you.
Turn the air conditioning on.
So at this moment in time, the tabs table has 2 records. I'm just going to ask that you ignore those for now. They're from a previous demonstration. I can't delete those without taking longer to do this demonstration. If I go back onto the phone itself, just takes a second to refresh and open up Safari. And I can open up a new tab. What I will just do now is search for the time that we're on now, so 14:10, and hit go. So right now that page is loaded. Sure. And I can go back into the database and just hit reload. That will bring the most recent version of the database from the device back onto my computer and show it back in this window in exactly the same way as I was viewing it a second ago. And you can see right now there's still only 2 records. So the fact that I did a new tab and a new search has had no effect on what I can see. This is different to on previous versions of iOS, where you would already now see a new record with the 1410 search, which I'd made. I'm then going to do another search. Hopefully it's going to catch up with me. It's now 1411, so I'll do a search for 1411. Okay, we can see the page is loaded, and I can go back over to this tool and reload the database. We still don't have a new record that shows that a search is being conducted. I'll just take the time to do another little search and just do 1411X. Reload the page again. Still, nothing's appeared. I can even close down Safari, just minimize it into the background, and then bring it back into the foreground by just pressing the Safari icon. I can hit reload again. We still don't have a new record. And I can do a further search for now 1412. 1412 is loaded, and I can reload the page. Still no records present. I can now go into Safari and just close the tab. So now that tab is closed, and I can just prove that. So that tab is now closed, and I can go back over here and reload, and you'll see a new record has appeared. I'm just going to change the time zone just so that this shows accurately, and tell my tool to treat the timestamps as Eastern time. So we look at this particular record. You can see the title is 1412. That's the last item that I searched for. You can see the URL is the google.ca /search 1412. Again, that is the content that I searched for. And then we see this field here, the last viewed timestamp. And the time here still says 1410 because that's the time that I first loaded the tab. The fact that I navigated between, the fact that I minimized and reopened Safari, bears no relevance to this timestamp. It is purely the timestamp that tab was created or brought back into focus.
To an untrained eye, can that development of a timestamp become confusing?
Yes, the name last viewed time clearly has implications that would make you believe that it was the time that the page was last viewed. It's a very simple test that I just demonstrated to prove that that's not the case.
Is there any other reason that Cellebrite removed that process of timestamp other than to clarify that issue?
Objection, Your Honor.
No, I'll allow it.
Purely because we determined it was unreliable to use as a time that the page was last viewed.
If an examiner simply made a report from Axiom or Cellebrite or another software but didn't have the time or skill to actually go into the data, could they be easily confused by this?
Yes, the way that Cellebrite provided this information showed as last viewed timestamp. The way that Axiom provides this data is called last interaction time. So there is some leeway there to misunderstand it less from Axiom because it's talking about tab interaction rather than a web page that was last viewed.
Thank you. I have no further questions.
All right, thank you. The lights on, please. Mr. Alessi?
Briefly, Your Honor, if I may.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Do you want Mr. Whiffen to take this down?
Yes, please, Your Honor. Good afternoon, and hello again, Mr. Whiffen.
Good afternoon.
Magnet Forensics Axiom still shows a 2:27:40 a.m. timestamp on its forensic tool, correct?
Correct.
And Magnet Forensic is a reliable forensic tool company, correct?
As reliable as they come, yes.
The demonstration that you just performed, when did you create it?
The demonstration?
What you just...
Like literally just now as I was doing it live.
So you
Is how
just
you mean?
created the demonstration now live on the stand?
That particular demonstration, yes.
Yeah. So, that demonstration, therefore, was created after Celebrite removed the 2:27:40 timestamp from all of its tool programs, correct?
No, incorrect. I mean, that demonstration that I just provided was right now, it was live. Initially, when I did these tests, I did the same kind of experiment, the same type of testing, back in late 2023, I believe. And after I did those tests and used that research, that is when Celebrite removed the timestamp.
Maybe my question wasn't clear. Let me see if I could rephrase it. The demonstration that you just gave, when did you prepare it? The demonstration, not just the demonstration that you just showed on the screen. When did you create that demonstration on your computer?
Hey, again, I've been doing this demonstration for 2 years.
My question, again, is the demonstration you just gave.
Yes.
When was the last time you altered that demonstration?
Other than to use different search terms, it's the same demonstration.
I'll try it differently.
Yes, please.
When was the last time you altered in any way the demonstration you just gave?
Right now.
So you altered it right now, and that alteration was made after Celebrite had removed the 2:27:40 a.m. timestamp from its programs, correct?
Yes, okay.
Thank you. No further questions, Your Honor.
Mr. Whitfield, you are all set, so
Thank you.
very much.
Thank you.
May we be seeing why Mr. Whiffen is collecting his items?
Joyce, feel free to.
You are watching Live Impact News on WCNC Plus as they are doing a little sidebar on day 6 of the retrial for Karen Read, just outside of Boston, Massachusetts, where she is charged with second-degree manslaughter for the death of her boyfriend at the time, a Boston police officer, that happened at a party in 2022. The digital forensics expert there conducting a demo on how they did some of their research and on the phone and phone logs of one of the witnesses that we have not seen yet, Jennifer McCabe, as well as the deceased himself, Officer O'Keefe, Jeff O'Keefe. Let's see if they are continuing this. We'll get back to the witnesses and the testimonies here at the Karen Read retrial. continue to wait for the sidebar to wrap up there out of Dedham, Massachusetts. We are lining up a press conference happening right now that's just coming into the WCNC Charlotte newsroom, actually of a press conference out of California where they are speaking on several lawsuits that they have filed, Attorney General here of California, against the Trump administration. And let's go ahead and switch to that now and listen in.
At these facilities, and that's what our report details in multiple ways. And so I had a bill that became the law of the state of California that banned for-profit private prisons and for-profit private immigration detention centers. For-profit private prisons are still banned by that law, AB 32. But the federal administration challenged the for-profit private detention center ban part of the bill, and this office, the California DOJ, defended the bill in court, and unfortunately the court found that that ban was not something that could continue to be legally enforceable, so the detention centers are allowed to exist. But we do hope that in terms of what can we do about it, what can we do about the fact that people aren't getting access to health care or their prescribed medicines, that is the whole point of this report. We are shedding a light on it. We are daylighting this fact and this unacceptable set of circumstances so that policymakers, including those in Congress and the federal government, know what's happening in these facilities that federal tax dollars fund. And if they think it's appropriate, and I can't see how they would, for people who need medicine to not get medicine, then they can continue the status quo. But if they think it needs to be changed and that people deserve a level of humanity and decency and appropriate standard of care, then they can make the changes, because as policymakers.
All right, we are now looking into the State Department briefing with Tammy Bruce. We're going to go to that here now, live on Impact News on WCNC+.
And thank you for the question. Policies. That includes the life-saving response in Uganda, where more than 75 American experts worked hand in hand with local officials to officially end Uganda's 2025 Ebola outbreak, a tremendous global health achievement. The Secretary has traveled extensively, and don't I know it, to 15 countries, deepening U.S. diplomatic ties and securing major foreign policy wins, from Panama's decision to withdraw from China's Belt and Road Initiative to his leadership in bringing Ukraine and Russia to the table to discuss a path towards peace, leading the nations closer to peace than ever before. His efforts to protect our homeland are having a global impact. We've designated 6 violent Mexican cartels, along with TDA and MS-13, as foreign terrorist organizations to block their financial networks and bar their entry into the United States. Our border is more secure than ever, and illegal crossings at our southwest border have dropped by 95% since 2024. This is due to President Trump's leadership and Secretary Rubio's historic action to secure agreements with Guatemala, Panama, and El Salvador to intercept and deport illegal aliens who enter their territories. And to further build regional peace, Secretary Rubio signed a declaration of principles between the Democratic Republic of Congo and Rwanda, launching a pathway to stability in the region. In the Middle East, he is actively working with Israel, Arab partners, and the European Union to shape post-war governance in Gaza and lay the groundwork for Arab-led reconstruction efforts, aligning with President Trump's long-term vision for peace in the region. He also has reinforced the United States as the premier strategic partner for Gulf allies, resulting in 2 landmark investment commitments from the United Arab Emirates and Saudi Arabia for technology, defense, and infrastructure. Those deals total $2 trillion in investments. We've also brought Americans home. Through diplomacy, we've helped secure the release of dozens of unjustly detained U.S. citizens, bringing them back to their families where they belong. We've reinstated Cuba as a state sponsor of terrorism, sanctioned Iran's shadow oil fleet and Houthi financiers, as well as designated the Houthis as a foreign terrorist organization. These steps send a clear message. Under this administration, there will be consequences for supporting terrorism. 100 days in, the results are undeniable. This is American diplomacy the American people deserve: decisive, accountable, and unapologetically America first. And I do believe that you may have some questions. Andrea Mitchell, who is now surprised.
Andrew.
Hi, good afternoon. Andrea Mitchell.
It was all set up.
She is, she was thinking she had some extra time, but this afternoon, it's morning somewhere. In Los Angeles, it's the morning. In Hawaii, it's very early. What can I do for you? Or should I ask? I will go to Matt Lee first.
I'll start.
Well, no, shall we?
Finally.
Finally, I'm asking the questions. All right, here's what we'll do. We will go with Matt, and then I will come back to you.
I just have two very brief.
You set that up as who set this up.
I did not.
All right, sir.
Wait a second.
And now I've missed you. Everyone missed you. It was notably different here in the room with you gallivanting around London for some reason. But here we are now. We're all together.
Secretary who never showed up.
Well.
But anyway. So listen, since I was away last week, and I know this came up last week, but I just want to try and get a fine point, put a fine point on it, which is that tomorrow is the 50th anniversary of the fall of Saigon, and the end of the Vietnam War. There have been reports that the U.S. has instructed or otherwise advised U.S. diplomats in Vietnam not to attend commemoration ceremonies. Is that true? Because the answer that we keep getting is that the U.S. and Vietnam are strong partners, and this, and they invited people, but there's no decision one way or another. So, is it correct that they've been told or advised not to attend?
Well, as well as most people here, if not even better, after decades, that I'm not going to discuss conversations that we've had with our diplomats here or overseas. But I will, in the event people are curious about the answer you expect, I will provide you an answer, and everyone else as well. The United States and Vietnam have a robust bilateral relationship, and we are committed to deepening and broadening those ties. We look forward to working with the Vietnamese government and the people of Vietnam to address shared challenges and opportunities. And considering, again, half a century ago when that ended, we now, of course, have a generation, my generation, that it is amazing to be able to say that, to have this relationship with Vietnam as a good relationship and one that is bilateral and robust. So that is a very good example of what can happen over the time of about 50 years. Okay. Did you have a second question?
Well, yeah, but just on this, so
sure.
Are U.S. diplomats going to be participating in these?
I'm not going to answer that question. I'm not going to discuss what has been suggested or not suggested or communications with our allies and or our diplomats in foreign countries. Yes, sir.
Thanks.
Thank you.
I have two questions. The first, there's reporting today that 4,000 visas for students with criminal records were revoked in the first 100 days of the administration. That's a number that's higher than we've seen before, so I wanted to see if I could get more fidelity on that, and then I had a different topic.
Well, I know that consular affairs and the State Department do not discuss the details of visas. We do not provide statistics. We do not discuss numbers. And so I would just remind people that certainly I wouldn't comment on a number that has been printed somewhere. What I can tell you is that it's something that we don't provide.
And then separately, there's reporting that Iraq has arrested an ISIS suspect linked to the New Orleans terror attack on New Year's. Does the state have any comment on that or any participation?
I spoke with the Secretary a little earlier. I did not ask him about that, so let's take that back, and I certainly would hope to speak with him again and can ask him that, and we'll get that back to you, certainly. And now, Andrea Mitchell. Yes?
I wanted to ask about Ukraine.
Okay.
Russia has continuously been bombing Ukraine, Kyiv the other day, more bombing overnight, after calling for a ceremonial ceasefire, a 3-day ceasefire next week to honor, so they can celebrate and honor their World War II victory, but they have still not agreed, leave almost 50 days since it was first proposed, to the ceasefire, the 30-day ceasefire that Ukraine has accepted. And now, as well, Foreign Minister Lavrov, in an interview, has said that the Russian position
You're watching Live Impact News on WCNC Plus just after 2:30 on Tuesday afternoon here in Charlotte. Tammy Bruce, a spokesperson right now, conducting a briefing for the State Department. Top right-hand side, you can see Dwayne Parrish outside of the governor's mansion, in South Carolina. They're talking tourism, and Governor McMaster is expected to join them at some point today. And then bottom right is Air Force One, of course, and that will be leaving for Michigan sometime this afternoon, as the president is expected to make a speech there in Michigan, the state that he won in the 2024 election, and on his 100th day, after his 100th day in office. So we continue to monitor, though, this live briefing from the State Department.
Across the state.
But that is not something we can do. It's harmful to get ahead of what our experts, what our diplomats, what the Secretary of State, what the President of the United States, the most powerful people in the world meeting to find a resolution to this, and discussing it or speculating does not help. It increases, I think, fear and confusion. So I won't do that. But I do have something I can tell you that the Secretary said to me about the situation just a short time ago, Andrea Mitchell. We are now at a time where concrete proposals need to be delivered by the two parties on how to end this conflict. How we proceed from here is a decision that belongs now to the President. If there is not progress, we will step back as mediators in this process.
Well, he said on Meet the Press that this week was going to be pivotal.
No, sure.
I'm
This sounds like a
paraphrasing.
pivotal statement to me.
Yeah, so is there some sort of a time frame?
Well,
to
he
what
said
he's
now.
just said?
He said now is the time where concrete proposals need to be delivered by the two parties in the conflict. And if there is not progress, which we leave, of course, I'm not going to speculate on what that timeline means to the President or to the Secretary. But that is a very distinct statement from the Secretary. Both the Secretary and the President are very transparent men, and the American people have been watching this process openly, which itself is kind of a new experience. But that is what he said to me just a little bit ago.
Can you
All right.
speak to his level of frustration with the process? It seems to be reflected in his statement.
I will not channel the Secretary. He again, is very available. And he has been, again, you saw him this weekend on television, and he's a very clear, often unguarded, transparent man who cares about the nature of what is transpiring on this planet in a very unique position to make a difference. And that is what he wants to do. Yes, sir.
Thank you, Tommy. Just to follow up on what the Secretary has said, you quoted him as saying concrete proposals need to be delivered by both sides. Proposals on what?
Well, obviously, to end the conflict.
So you expect-
Clearly, it's about what they've been working toward is a ceasefire, a complete, full, durable ceasefire, right? Not a 3-day moment so you can celebrate something else. A complete, durable ceasefire and an end to the conflict.
Does this mean that the proposals that the United States had on the table, is it off the table now that you're seeking?
I'm not going to speculate on what the statement that's been made here means about things that have existed or have been discussed before. It's just what he has said today, and I think it's clear.
Fair enough. And my second question on North Korea, they acknowledge finally that they apparently have sent their their soldiers to fight for Russia in Ukraine. Does this change your approach, your view to the conflict at all? And any response that you could come up with?
Well, we know this is pretty simple. North Korea is not being helpful. They're not being helpful. There are other nations that also are facilitating this carnage, and their actions make it possible to continue. Third countries, like North Korea, have perpetuated.
You are watching Tammy Bruce there from the State Department, the spokesperson for the State Department, on a briefing right now that's happening out of D.C. Also a busy afternoon outside Carolina's state capital, Governor McMaster's mansion, and he is expected to join the folks there to talk about tourism, Department of Parks and Rec there in Columbia, South Carolina, and President Trump expected to, he took off, or he's about to join there at Joint Base Andrews to jump on Air Force One for his rallying speech in Michigan, marking 100 days in office. But from there, we're going to take this live right now. It is a look in Uptown in the right in front of the federal courthouse, where 1 year has passed since a deadly officer ambush in East Charlotte. But today, happening right now is a celebration. It's a dedication of a plaque, a memorial to the service and life of Deputy U.S. Marshal Tommy Weeks, who was one of the 4 officers who lost their life on April 29th, 2024. They did have a private ceremony inside where a number of people spoke, and we are joining them outside where fans and friends and family that were interested in honoring Tommy's love for sports, they were asked, and it looks like they are coming out to wear their team gear from one of his favorite teams, Washington Capitals, Washington Nationals, Maryland Terrapins, as well as the Carolina Panthers. So we see his wife there. Looks like it's a moment of silence. We are waiting for her to take to the microphone any minute now, but this is a special moment there inside or outside of the federal courthouse in Uptown. And it looks like there is a musician playing the violin just before she takes to the mic. So let's go ahead and take that live now. You're watching Live Impact News on WCNC+.
I'm pretty loud. I don't know that I need it, to be honest with you. Okay. All right. I don't know that I need it, but I will. So I'm just going to read to you what's on the monument for those of you who are not close to it, and then you can come by and see it after. So Tommy Weeks Jr., date of birth September 27, 1975. His end of watch April 29, 2024. Tommy served in the U.S. Custom and Border Protection for 8 years before joining the U.S. Marshal Service in the District of Columbia from June 2011 till transferring to the Western District of North Carolina in 2014. While serving in the Western District of North Carolina, Tommy supported the Carolina Regional's Fugitive Task Force with distinction, receiving numerous special acts and performance awards. On April 29, 2024, Tommy tragically lost his life while serving on this task force. A life of courage, dedication, and unwavering commitment to his community and the legacy that Tommy has left behind. 3 other officers lost their lives that day. U.S. Marshal Task Force Officer William Auden Elliott and Samuel Sam Peloche, both of the North Carolina Department of Adult Correction, and Charlotte-Mecklenburg Police Officer Joshua Iyer. The lives touched are forever changed, and those you protected are grateful for your service. In memories of our fallen brother. Tell more stories on Tommy inside and make some more laughs and laughter. So thank you for being here.
The unveiling of Tommy Weeks, U.S. Marshal Deputy, being revealed there in front of the federal courthouse in Uptown by his wife, and those who are close to him or not close to him taking part of the tribute, the memorial today, as we are 1 year later from that officer ambush in East Charlotte. The flyer that went out said if people can wear their favorite gear from one of Tommy's favorite teams, that would be appreciated, and it looks like there is a good turnout there. Top right-hand side of your screen, you can see the group gathering now, talking about tourism in South Carolina, as we are on the doorstep of summer plans, and President Trump getting ready to leave Joint Base Andrews for Michigan. Do we see him pop out of Air Force One? So he is going to board Air Force One and take off for Michigan, where he is expected to make a speech as well. But right now, let's go ahead and take you live to South Carolina, Columbia, South Carolina, as they speak on tourism. And let's go ahead and take President Trump first. We don't expect him to speak to media here at the airport, but we will just watch him go to Air Force One. Again, getting ready to fly to Michigan. I believe he is expected to speak at 6 o'clock tonight, but leaving there from Joint Base Andrews and route to Selfridge Air National Guard Base in Michigan, where he is expected to make remarks starting at 4 o'clock, around 4 o'clock. So it looks like he is running pretty much on time. He will go from the Air National Guard Base at Selfridge to Michigan National Guard, where he will also deliver remarks, and then make his way over to Macomb County Community College later on tonight. All right, we'll jump across the tarmac. On to Air Force One he goes. He will be sure to pick up his speech later on tonight. Back to South Carolina and tourism, back here on Live Impact News on WCNC Plus.
All right, good afternoon. It's a real honor. Thank you for having me and allowing me to represent the team back home at Visit Greenville SC and the hundreds of hospitality-related businesses and the thousands of hospitality workers in Greenville County. Tourism is such a vibrant part of our community. In 2024, we had millions of visitors create an economic impact of $2.5 billion on our local community. It not only serves as an incredible piece of the economy in Greenville, but it also creates a very thriving quality of life for our local residents. There's not a week that goes by that I don't hear somebody who tells me that they've recently moved to the area because they once fell in love with the place on a visit, for whatever that visit was, whether it was a girls' weekend or a conference or a sporting event or whatever it is. And it speaks to the welcoming and hospitality nature of those that they interact with. Our participation in the Front Porch program has been pivotal to that. Our team works so hard to create the sense of demand and to create a voice for Greenville as a travel destination. But the welcome centers, our visitor info centers, and our 400 certified tourism ambassadors locally serve as the conduit by which we take all of that interest in Greenville as a destination and connect that interest with those local small businesses and allow our economy to thrive. Thank you on behalf of our organization for being the front porch of an industry that serves as the front porch of our community. I love National Travel and Tourism Week as it gives us a chance to shine the spotlight on all of those who make a difference in our community, who create that welcoming and inclusive and hospitality culture that we're so proud of here in South Carolina. Thank you very much, and I hope you have a great week.
Thank you, Heath. We appreciate both Heath and Rachel being here with us today, as well as all of our partners out there in the audience, for your dedication to promoting this great state that we call home. It has taken the dedicated efforts of many industry professionals across the state to build and grow our more than $30 billion tourism industry. Each member of our industry plays a critical role in achieving year-over-year tourism growth and success. And this certainly includes hundreds of thousands of hospitality employees all across our state. From the frontline staff we often see at hotels, restaurants, and attractions, to the support and management of staff that are often less visible to the traveling public. Every one of these roles is critical to our state's tourism success. And each year, our partners with the South Carolina Association of Tourism Regions honor a hardworking tourism professional with the Hospitality Employee of the Year Award. Here to present this year's award is Joanna Hodge, CVB Partnership Director with the Myrtle Beach Area Chamber of Commerce and the current president of the South Carolina Association of Tourism Regions. Everyone join me in welcoming Joanna.
Good afternoon, everyone. It's a true privilege to welcome you all to today's award ceremony, where we celebrate an outstanding individuals who are at the heart and soul of our state's hospitality industry. The hospitality sector is the backbone of our tourism economy, and it's powered by dedicated professionals whose warmth and commitment turn every visit into a memorable experience. Today, we shine the spotlight on one exceptional individual, someone who has not only met but exceeded the highest standards of service, professionalism, and genuine care. This award honors an employee who exemplifies excellence, resilience, and an unwavering dedication to making every guest feel valued and at home. After reviewing many remarkable nominations from across the state, our selection committee chose someone whose passion for hospitality is truly inspiring. Guests consistently praise her friendly demeanor, meticulous attention to detail, and her remarkable ability to create lasting relationships. It is my honor to announce that the 2025 Hospitality Employee of the Year is Eva Averson from the Grand Strand Resort in Surfside Beach. Eva has been with Grand Palms Resort for an incredible 29 years, arranging and coordinating activities for guests in both recreation and the day spa. Her steady attention to detail, dependability, and caring nature have made her a pillar of the resort. Eva's kindness and commitment have not only earned her the glowing reviews, but also have set a new standard for hospitality excellence. So please join me in congratulating Eva on this well-deserved honor.
Thank you, Joanna, and congratulations to Eva for earning this year's Hospitality Employee of the Year Award. South Carolina's tourism industry has been blessed with enormous support over the years, as more and more leaders across the state have recognized the importance and value of tourism. And our success as an industry is owed in no small part to the tremendous leadership. Is he here yet? Tremendous leadership of what would have been our final guest here today, but we are at his home here now. So I'm going to just do a couple things, but I have to say this, and this has never been truer. Governor McMaster has recognized the value of tourism in our state's economy and has committed resources and leadership to help our industry grow. He continues to emphasize tourism's vital role in our economy and our quality of life. And I personally, and I know that I speak for all of the industry, am very grateful for his support and that he could join us here today, and he will be here, to help recognize all the strides that we're helping make in this industry. So I'm going to I'm actually going to present to the three of you. So I'll step up here. Okay, this is normally his part, so bear with me. And and the font is not as big as it is on my paper, so I have to pull these out. Governor's Proclamation, State of South Carolina. Whereas South Carolina is blessed with an abundance of natural and man-made gifts, from beautiful beaches to historic city streets, meandering Blackwater rivers, pristine lakes, and the majestic Blue Ridge Mountains, and whereas, because of these gifts and the hard work and ingenuity of countless South Carolinians, our rich tradition of hospitality has blossomed into a multi-billion-dollar travel and tourism industry. And whereas tourism fuels the economic growth and prosperity in South Carolina, pumping visitor dollars into local economies, supporting 1 in every 10 jobs in our state, and contributing billions of dollars in state and local tax collections. And whereas the success of the Palmetto State's tourism industry is made possible through the stewardship, creativity, innovation, and outstanding service provided by our tourism professionals, from our chefs to our property managers, tour guides, golf course greenskeepers, local housekeepers, hotel housekeepers, event planners, and beyond. I therefore, Governor Henry Dargan McMaster, Governor of the great state of South Carolina, do hereby proclaim May 4th through the 10th, 2025, as Travel and Tourism Week throughout the state, and encourage all South Carolinians to celebrate the Palmetto State's robust travel and tourism industry, recognize its significant impact on our economy, and honor the tourism professionals who work tirelessly to help visitors and citizens discover everything that our wonderful state has to offer. Signed, Henry Dargan McMaster, Governor, State of South Carolina. While she's doing that, I'd like to say a final thank you to everyone here who joined us this afternoon. I appreciate personally what you all have done for our industry and continue to do for our great state of South Carolina. If there are any questions this time from the media, I'd be happy to take those. If not, everybody please make your way inside to the air conditioning, to refreshments. We also have some renderings of our welcome centers that are getting ready to break ground. Come in and take a look. And at some point, get your picture taken here on our traveling front porch over here behind the Welcome Center staff. Please post on social media. Thank you all for what you're doing, for being here today.
All right, folks, Vanessa Rufus here in the Live Impact News studio. You're watching on WCNC Plus, as we just saw here some recognition of folks in South Carolina's travel and tourism industry, marking Travel and Tourism Week there. And as we pointed out on the bottom right corner of your screen, we continue to watch as Air Force One is departing for Michigan, President Trump on board. We've talked about today marking 100 days of the president's first 100 days, second term, of course, and he is in for a big day of events, including some rallying type of events in Michigan. He'll also be meeting with the Democratic Governor Gretchen Whitmer there. So we will continue to keep you posted on that trip itself. However, we are seeing several leaders nationwide and locally weighing in on the president's first 100 days, folks weighing in from the president's own party and those who are with the Democrats. And so speaking of Democrats, we've got Senator Cory Booker of New Jersey speaking at this very moment. Of course, most recently, Mr. Booker making big headlines for the non-filibuster filibuster that he completed, speaking out against the president's policies. So we can listen in now live and see what Mr. Booker has to say.
Instead, he has called a hero a dictator and coddled up to the dictator in Putin. In addition to that, he has alienated our allies, said in the most demeaning and degrading way that he was going to make Canada a 51st state, and gave license to China to have influence across the globe as we, through our cuts in USAID, have retreated. We had sent a few people over after the disaster in Myanmar who got fired while they were doing the job, while the Chinese stepped up and brought millions and millions of dollars of resources to people in aid. That used to be America. He lied. He said he was going to be a champion of free speech, and now he is attacking college campuses, cutting resources that we need for scientific investment, going after private businesses like law firms and making them heel in front of him, or he will unleash economic peril in a way that is unconstitutional and illegal. And finally, this president is trashing our Constitution. Again, don't listen to us here in Congress. Listen to the Supreme Court itself. When the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court does the rare thing to rebuke a president who called for the impeachment of a judge because he didn't like his decision, he is not respecting the separation of powers and the equal power of each branch. But more than that, the way he intimidates and trolls judges has seen threats on our judges go up as he has singled people out and targeted them online. This is the president that has no respect for our Constitution or our constitutional traditions. And so again, the American people have spoken. He has set a record in my lifetime and beyond for fantastic failing in a way that truly has even Republicans standing now against him on his policies. We are in a crisis moment. This president is out of control. And the question is not what Democrats are going to do, but what the Republicans in Congress will do. They know it is wrong, this tariff war he has unleashed on the globe. They know it is wrong when the Secretary of Defense violates our national security with his use of a public app. The Republicans here know it is wrong. What he is doing in undermining bipartisan spending plans. They know it's wrong when he's impounding dollars that go to help local communities. The question is, what will, after 100 days, Congress people do as we now see a bill in this work period that is threatening to cut health care for millions and millions of Americans? Why? Why gut Medicaid, which he promised he wouldn't do? Why is he pushing to do that? Because he wants to give more tax cuts to the wealthiest in our country. It is time for more people to step up and say this is not left or right, it is right or wrong. This is not about party, this is about patriotism. It's time to recall the conscience of all Americans, Republican or Democrat, to say no. Stop the lies, stop the corruption, and do not keep your hands off the Medicaid of millions and millions of Americans.
Thank you. Let's go. We gotta go pretty quick. Go ahead.
What do you think is the difference between...
We'll continue to monitor this address from Senate Dems. In the background, meantime, we wanted to turn our attention back to Boston, Massachusetts, and the Karen Read retrial, where we're actually now seeing a key witness who was really quite popularly billed as folks were really waiting to hear this testimony here. She is speaking right now on the stand. So this is Jennifer McCabe, and we are now week 2 of this retrial. Let's listen in live.
I just said they live 34 Fairview Road off of Chapman.
Do you know if John O'Keefe had ever been to the Albert home before?
I don't believe he had.
In that conversation, how long did that conversation take?
It was quick.
Was there any other conversation that you had with him other than that one conversation?
Yes, he called me back, and he was trying to find it.
Trying to find the address?
Try to find the house on Fairview.
Did he ask you for help trying to find the address?
I'm not sure his exact words, but yes, he needed help. And so I just said, I told him, just go down the street, go by Bella's house. It's at the bottom of the street.
So you used Bella's house as a point of designation to try to guide him to get to your sister's house?
Yes.
Tell us who Bella was to John.
Bella is my daughter and John's niece friend. So Bella is friends with my daughter and John's niece.
Okay. And was there any relationship between Bella's mother and John that you knew of?
Okay.
All right, folks, looks like we're getting a quick recess there out of the Karen Reed retrial as we get more activity there in the courtroom and we get an idea of where we're coming back in. As far as the proceedings there, we'll take you back to the Boston, Massachusetts area. Meantime, a big day for us here at WCNC Charlotte. We are not only watching some pretty major headlines, we're also keeping an eye on how the community has been reacting to now hitting this milestone of the officers ambushed in East Charlotte. If you can believe it, it happened 1 year ago today, and I know this was a big situation that really struck a chord with folks. It really hurt a lot of people, of course, families that were forever changed, law enforcement, community certainly rocked by this, and the community at large, not just the neighborhood itself where that happened, but really all of us who are part of this Charlotte community feeling the loss. So we do want to remind you that throughout the day we'll continue to check in on remembrances from that day, any big events related to this, and we'll just remind you that coming up at 5:30 on WCNC Plus, we are dedicating our 5:30 newscast strictly to looking back on this day for our community, what we've learned, what we still have questions about, and of course we'll be honoring the officers. So keep it here on WCNC Charlotte as we go on throughout the day. Meantime, we've got some activity that we're seeing over on the Live Impact News Studio feed. So we want to take you now out to some of the discussions underway. What do we got here, folks?
Drones.
Okay, so is this the Senate Judiciary Committee?
On drones.
Okay, so looks like we've got folks hearing about drone policies that might be impacting military and such. I do see it looks like they've got folks from the military there to speak, and we'll listen in now live.
30I. It was at about 130 pages. We've cut that down to 20 pages now. So we're looking to streamline our processes as much as possible so commanders understand what they have for authorities.
That's certainly very helpful. And I guess, if I could convey kind of the angst to the American people, we're looking at this and thinking, okay, there's drone incursion into the United States. There's bad actors within our borders now who have the ability to even attack infrastructure. I mean, we're talking military bases, but it could be electric power lines, it could be pipelines, it could be anything at this point. And we seem very, like we're approaching this from a very bureaucratic standpoint as opposed to something that literally could be a problem next week. And I'm wondering what we can do and what we can help you do in the sense of urgency that could be needed. We have bad actors even at state level within our borders because, we had open borders for the last 4 years. So the terrorist activity that's now in our country, bad actors from other state that don't have the best interest of our country in mind are here with this kind of capability. And what can we do to speed up this process so that it's handled with the urgency as opposed to kind of like this curious bureaucratic question that needs to be resolved? That's a question. What can we do to speed it up, both from DOD and from Congress's standpoint to support what you need?
Thank you for the question, Congressman. We have a legislative proposal working through the Pentagon right now focused on 3 areas where we could improve Section 130I. In the Department's opinion, we don't want this provision to sunset. We want to make sure that the authorities continue forward. There is an expiration date on 130I authorities next year. We also want to expand the locations and missions covered under 130I. As we've discussed today, the bases are not all covered. Not all installations qualify as one of the 9 mission areas under 130I. So we'd like to expand that to cover all installations. And then we'd also like to facilitate data sharing because right now data sharing from the DOD side is limited only in the pursuit of a legal case against a particular individual or group. We're not able to share data with our interagency partners to improve our tactics, techniques, or procedures. And to your point, Congressman, earlier about driving cost efficiencies, being able to share data to produce better technology would help us be more efficient with taxpayer money.
Thank you for that. The gentleman's time's expired. Chair now recognizes the gentlelady from Florida, Ms. Luna, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Chairman.
Here's what every American needs to know that's watching this currently. In 2024 alone, 350 drones were detected flying over our military installations, over 100 to be exact. And that came straight out of the mouth of General Gregory Gillett, commander of NORAD and U.S. Northern Command. These were not just toys, these were intelligence gathering, signal jamming, and potentially weaponized drones. These incursions happened while the Biden administration sat on their hands, allowing bureaucracy and interagency dysfunction to run the show. I see a lot of military here right now. You guys all know that bureaucracy many times can be our worst enemy. Now that President Trump is back in office, thank God, we finally have strong leadership again, but cleaning up Biden's national security blunder is no small task. Our military installations are still extremely vulnerable. As hearing just sitting here from other some of my colleagues, we have the CCP, Iranian proxies, Mexican cartels. They all know this. We are here today to fix that, and let me be crystal clear, as I'm sure many of you would agree. If you are flying unauthorized drones over military installations, you should expect it to be shot down. Don't expect Uncle Sam to pay for either. My opinion is play stupid games, win stupid prizes. Now, Admiral Spendro, I've heard directly from General Gillett in February, 350 drones incursions over 100 military installations in 1 year. I know that this is not your fault directly, but this is a massive security gap and an utter failure. Under current authorities, what is preventing base commanders from neutralizing these immediately, in my opinion, going out there with a shotgun and shooting these things down?
Well, thank you, ma'am, for the
Live Impact News on WCNC Plus, turning away from this oversight committee discussing drones, and we wanted to pivot now to a new feed that's popped up here for us. Happening right now, we have U.S. Speaker of the House, Mike Johnson, at an event which is honoring a group called the 6888. This is the only black, all-female unit to serve in Europe during World War II, and there is going to be honoring here with a Congressional Gold Medal. There was a long-running campaign to try to recognize their efforts, and so we're seeing that come to fruition now. We'll listen in live now. You're watching Live Impact News.
Then, just as today, letters of home were very, very important. They were lifelines that grounded the soldiers. They reminded our brave heroes of all they were fighting for that was actually waiting back at home. Morale reports during the war underscored just how important mail was to the soldier's spirit. So much so that the phrase, "no mail, low morale," became widespread. It was later adopted by the Army as the official motto of the 6888. Yet, for all the importance of mail, millions of undelivered letters piled up in dark warehouses across Europe. And those letters might well have stayed there, were it not for the work of the women that we celebrate today. That's right. Under the command of Lieutenant Colonel Charity Adams Early, the battalion. All right. Parenthetically, I just want to note she sounds like a Marvel hero. That name is so awesome. Charity Adams Early. The battalion deployed to England and got to work on the backlog. They worked in 3 shifts around the clock, day in and day out, to sort through the literal mountains of mail that had accumulated, all while navigating troop movements that turned on a dime, incomplete addresses, illegible writing, and thousands of soldiers who shared the same name. Listen to this. This is just one example, okay? My name's Mike Johnson, right? At this time, I know, it's sad. At this time, Michael was the 9th most popular name, and Johnson was one of the top 5 surnames. So my staff did the math. They said, "Sir, it's pretty safe to assume that roughly 30,000 Mike Johnsons served in World War II. And that's enough to fill Fenway Park, okay? Now just imagine the challenge that these ladies had. They were trying to get the right letter to the right soldier, and that's the kind of challenge that they faced. With great ingenuity, they maintained a tracking system of 7 million ID cards to solve the issue of soldiers sharing names. They didn't have all the high-tech gadgets that we have today. They had to do it manually. Processing roughly 65,000 pieces of mail per shift, they cleared the entire backlog in no less than 3 months. That's right. Listen to this. By the war's end, The 6888 had sorted over 17 million pieces of mail. They got the job done, even in the face of inadequate supplies and even in the face of discrimination, both for within the Army and back home. These women were valiant members of our greatest generation. Artists, academics, athletes, women who went on to pursue higher education, to build families, to buy homes, and shape the very foundation of the American middle class. We remember women like Margaret Sayles, who enlisted on her 20th birthday, okay? She enlisted on her 20th birthday, and she had dreams of pursuing music and teaching. We remember women like Romay Davis, who, okay? She used the GI Bill to attend fashion school, and decades later earned her black belt in her 70s, okay? Tough ladies. We also, of course, remember the incomparable Lieutenant Colonel Charity Adams Early, who guided her unit. She faced all those challenges. She guided her unit with unshakable grace and resolve. And even after earning her degree in mathematics, Latin, and physics, she returned to her studies after the war, and she said this famously, quote, "After handling 885 women, any course in college would be a cinch." We're blessed that 2 members of the 6888 are still with us today watching from home. They are, and we want to salute them from here in the chamber. Fannie McClendon, who hails from my home state of Louisiana. All right. She went on to serve her country as a major in the Air Force. That's right. We also have Anna Mae Robertson watching at home. Okay. Just last month, she celebrated her 101st birthday. Okay. Miss Anna Mae, you got a big group here, okay? These women and the entire 6888 are great American patriots, loyal to a nation that for far too long failed to return that favor. And I'm glad to say that that's changing, and we're doing that here today. This remarkable story has rightly captured imaginations. It has now inspired books and movies, stirred the conscience of millions of Americans who are just now hearing and sharing this incredible story. Today, here in the People's House, we add to that story. So thank you all for being here. We are honored to host you and to celebrate these exceptional women. God bless you.
Ladies and gentlemen, please stand for the presentation of the colors by the United States Army Color Guard from the 3rd United States Infantry Regiment, the Old Guard, the performance of our national anthem by the United States Army Band, Pershing Zone Brass Quintet, and the retiring of the colors. Ladies and gentlemen, please remain standing for the invocation delivered by Dr. Francis Tony Murphy Draper, CEO and publisher of Afro-American Newspaper.
Shall we pray? Eternal God, sovereign and sustainer, we bow our heads and lift our hearts today in awe and gratitude. In this hallowed place where history is remembered and sacrifice honored, we pause to commemorate a long overdue recognition, the awarding of the Congressional Gold Medal to the 6888 Central Postal Directory Battalion. We give thanks for the 855 courageous Black women, soldiers, sisters, daughters, mothers, and wives who served with the 6888. In 1945, God, they crossed oceans and broke barriers. Amid the devastation of war, under unimaginable conditions, cold, dark, rat-infested warehouses with bombs overhead and morale crumbling, they brought order, hope, and human connection. They sorted millions of pieces of mail, but even more profoundly, they reconnected hearts across oceans, reminding weary soldiers that they were not forgotten. From every corner of our nation they came, including proud daughters of my home state of Maryland, such as my own aunt, Vashti Turley Murphy Matthews, who alongside her sisters in arms showed the world what faith, courage, and determination could achieve when given the chance to serve. Lord, we thank you for President Joe Biden, whose signature affirmed this honor, and for the leadership of Representative Gwen Moore, Senator Jerry Moran, and Senator Jackie Rosen, whose bipartisan commitment made this historic day possible. May their example inspire continued efforts to honor truth, justice, and sacrifice. Today, we lift up the families, those gathered here and those carrying this legacy across generations. May this moment bring healing, affirmation, and pride. May it remind us that no act of valor is ever forgotten and no story of sacrifice should ever go untold. Bless the Congress and grant its members wisdom, humility, and moral clarity as they serve the people of this nation. And bless these United States of America, made stronger, richer, and more equitable because of women like those of the 6888. And it's in your name that we pray, and the people of God said, Amen.
Please be seated. Ladies and gentlemen, the Honorable Jake LaTurner, former United States Representative from the 2nd District of Kansas.
Mr. Speaker, distinguished guests, friends, I am so humbled to be here today for this celebration. And that's what this is a long overdue celebration for some very brave women in our history. As has been said here today, the women of the 6888 deserve to be honored with the highest civilian award Congress can give. In a time of war, and in a world that questioned both their worth and their capability, this all-Black, all-female battalion answered their nation's call with courage, dignity, and excellence. They understood that they were integral to our nation's success, that the millions of pieces of mail they sorted had an enormous impact on the morale of our soldiers, and they have not received the recognition that they deserve. This is not just about a medal, though. This is about cementing their rightful place in history, and I'm pleased to be a very small part of that. I want to thank Senator Moran, Senator Rosen, Representative Moore for their hard work in making sure that this day is possible. May the legacy of the 6888 continue to inspire us every single day and encourage us to build a nation ever worthy of their sacrifice. Thank you, and God bless you.
Ladies and gentlemen, the Honorable Gwen Moore, United States Representative from the 4th District of Wisconsin.
Mr. Speaker, the Early family, armed forces, I want to especially speak of Colonel Edna Cummings that you'll be hearing from shortly, honored guests, colleagues, all who are gathered here. It is such a privilege to be standing here in Emancipation Hall, a sacred place, and it is fitting for a location for this ceremony. The Capitol, the Emancipation Hall, is named for the enslaved laborers that played a crucial and oft-overlooked role in the construction of this Capitol. And they were excluded from the very freedom that it embodies. The lengthy process of constructing the U.S. Capitol relied upon free and enslaved laborers at every step. For example, slaves augmented a number of projects, perhaps most notably the Statue of Freedom that is atop the U.S. Capitol dome and is owed in part to the labor and skill of enslaved artisan Philip Reed. But of course, their contributions went unhidden and unrecognized. But now we have a plaque here, and this very hall really recognizes the labor of those folks. And today, indeed, the 6888 Battalion were these unsung heroes who served their country. And they did it because they were patriotic, not because they thought that they would ever get any recognition. And now, 80 years later, after they were deployed to Europe, this ceremony is a fitting end to a long journey to make sure that we do not forget their service. And none of them did it for glory. They did it for the love of country. And you know, the story reminds us so much that while there's much that divides our country today, there's even more that joins us together. And like a commitment to service, a commitment to doing something bigger than yourself, to live voluntarily, to go into service in a war zone, even in the face of segregation at home. We want to thank the women of the 6888 from all over the nation, the 855 women who served for their service. They're women like my constituent who is still alive, a young 101 years old, Private Anna Mae Robertson of Milwaukee, Wisconsin. I first got to know Anna Mae Robertson because she is the mother of a friend of mine that I went to college with, and she's also a constituent. And my office was contacted to look for some of the service medals that they thought she most certainly deserved. And as I got these service medals, I realized what a tremendous, remarkable, and unknown story the 6888 was. And that history lived right there in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. And as I worked to prepare these remarks, I had to think further about how this evolved. Her daughter, Cherie Robertson, very dear friend of mine, wrote me a letter, and I'm quoting from Cherie's letter. Quote, "By sponsoring the bill for the Congressional Gold Medal, you will be ensuring that the contributions and sacrifices made by the women who served in the 6888 Central Posting Battalion will not go unnoticed and will be appreciated by future generations." Unquote. And you've heard about the obstacles that these barriers, cold, freezing weather, rats, but they put duty first. And in the days before cell phones, emails, text, Instagram, you could only imagine how important getting a letter from home was, and as it sustained our young men in the theater of war. I want to quote from an obituary that appeared in the Niagara Gazette, May 21st, 2021, of the 688. Their work was more than sorting mail. It was ministering to the souls of soldiers, making sure they received that little piece of home that reminded them that they were not forgotten. Ergo, the motto, no mail, low morale. And as I hurry to a close, I want to thank Representative Jake LaTurner. I remember when I tracked you down in the Republican cloakroom to be my co-sponsor. I remember dogging all of the generals in the House, cussing, you better damn well help me get some signatures. Senator Jerry Moran, and of course my good friend, Senator Jackie Rosen, for spearheading this legislation in the Senate. And I also would be remiss if I didn't mention a person who helped me write these remarks and didn't put his name in here, my director, Chris Golden, who was dogged about getting the signatures. It took us 7 years to get this done. And of course, you're going to hear from amazing people like retired Army Colonel Edna Cummings and Carlton Philpott, and many others that I can't name, who picked up the phone to make calls and send emails to get us to this point. As one reporter noted in one of the many stories about these remarkable women, quote, "The 688 was an experiment, a pass-fail test to determine the value black women brought to the military." And let me say, today, all of us bear witness to their impeccable, remarkable performance, their commitment to freedom, and that's why we're able to gather here today in Emancipation Hall, to celebrate their legacy. Thank you so much.
Ladies and gentlemen, the Honorable Jackie Rosen, United States Senator from Nevada.
All right, you're watching Live Impact News on WCNC Plus as we've been hearing some remarks from various folks on this momentous day. The 6888 or the 6888 Central Postal Directory Battalion, that's where the colloquial term 6888 comes from, getting honored today with Congressional Gold Medal. As you heard there from Wisconsin Representative Gwen Moore, who was the co-sponsor of legislation to have this award presented, she talked about the fact that this was a long time coming, and it was a big effort to get this legislation off the ground, but it sounds like once it came to vote in 2022, it passed overwhelmingly, in fact unanimously, with nobody voting against that measure. Something interesting to note about this group, of course, we talked about this is the only black all-female unit to serve in Europe during World War II. But the work that they did, they were actually able to clear out a backlog of about 17 million pieces of mail in about 3 months. That's twice as fast as they were projected to be able to work. And so we heard some of the remarks speaking on how this was not only important work from just the logistical process of sorting through the mail and getting it to the places it needs to go, it was also a big morale booster for those soldiers who were fighting overseas, waiting for the mail from back home from their loved ones. So Really a great moment to kind of watch this honoring happening. Once again, this is happening in Emancipation Hall in Washington, D.C. We'll continue to watch this in the background, and as we see any big developments, we'll pop back in here on Live Impact News. Meantime, we still have the Karen Read retrial, which is underway in the Boston, Massachusetts area. We're still seeing a key witness on the stand there, Jennifer McCabe, and we'll listen in live right now on her remarks.
And then he yelled down saying something like, "You can't be driving around in this weather, with a broken taillight."
When you saw the defendant at your front door, had the weather changed overnight?
Yes.
Was it different?
Yes, now the snow had intensified. It was almost like, it was dark outside, but it was like whiteout conditions.
How dark?
Dark, it was dark. It was like 5:30 in the morning.
What was the visibility like?
Not good.
After you meet the defendant at your door, do you let her in or does she stay outside?
I'm not sure if I just grabbed my coffee and ran out
Where did
or
you go?
whether she came in. So we went down my walkway. She was just kind of running all around. The driver's door was open, so I told her I was going to drive because I thought she was too hysterical to drive. In the meantime, all of a sudden there was a car at the end of my street and there was a plow behind it.
The car that came to the end of your street, do you know where it went?
I meant the end of my driveway, I'm sorry.
When you say the end of your driveway, did it pull into your driveway?
No, it just kind of stopped right at the base of my driveway.
Okay. How far behind your car was that car?
Not far, not too far.
Okay. Did you know who was in that car?
No.
Did you learn who was in that car?
Yes,
How did you learn who was in the car?
because I said, "Who is that?"
Did you ask the defendant or did you walk
I
up?
asked the defendant, and she told me it was Kerry Roberts.
Did you meet Kerry Roberts face to face in your driveway that morning?
Yes, I wouldn't say we met. It was more of a, the plow was coming, so then she was having to move down the street, and then either Karen called her or she called Karen, but they were on the phone, Karen's phone over the car, so they started talking.
Did you get into the defendant's car?
Yes, we did. I got in the car with Miss Reed.
When you got in the car, you were in the driver's seat. Was Miss Reed in the passenger front?
Yes.
You said there was an open call. Is this something you could hear on a speaker?
Yes.
At that point, had you had a chance to go and look at the taillight of that car?
No.
Did you have any interest in the taillight at that point?
No.
There was an open call between who?
Karen and Kerry Roberts.
Can you describe what you heard in that call?
Karen was saying that she wanted to go to Fairview, and Kerry Roberts was instructing her that no, we weren't going to be going to Fairview, and she kept saying, "We got to go to your sister's house," and Kerry Roberts said, "No, we're not going to be driving around in this weather in two cars. Let's go back to John's. Let's go to Meadows. Let's go see if he's there." That was kind of the conversation, and then Karen was doing a lot of screaming, and Kerry was kind of yelling back at her to shut up.
Who was taking charge of the situation that morning?
Kerry Roberts.
Were you in charge of it?
No.
Did you weigh in or make any decisions on where you were going to go next, or were you just a listener?
I just listened. Kerry said that Kerry's kind of a take-charge person. She said, "We're going to Meadows," so I said, okay. I drove to Meadows.
Now, at this point, you didn't know Kerry Roberts other
No.
than that meeting?
Yes, correct.
And you agreed to follow her?
Yes.
So tell us what happens. Take us through the drive.
She might have followed me, I'm not sure, but we drove back to Meadows, pulled into the driveway.
So you knew where Meadows was? You had been there many times for the kids?
Yes.
You think Miss Roberts may have followed you?
Yes.
What was the weather conditions as you were driving?
They were awful. It was, I was driving very slow, cautiously. It was dark. It was hard to see. It was that type where the snow is coming at your window.
How long of a ride was it from your home to John's home?
Approximately 5-6 minutes.
Was there any other phone calls while you were in the car with Miss Roberts, or did the phone calls end?
I believe that was it.
Can you describe the defendant's demeanor on the trip from your house to John's house?
She was just screaming, yelling things. It was almost like everything she said 3 times. And she just went from one thing to the next. She was quite hysterical.
Do you remember what she was yelling about?
About going to Fairview, asking, could she have hit him? Did I hit him?
How many times did she raise the question, did I hit him? Could have I hit him?
A good amount.
Did you ever speak to her about that?
No.
At some point, did you finally get to John's home?
Yes,
When you got to John's home, who pulled in the driveway first?
I did.
Where did you pull in respect to the driveway?
I just pulled straight in next to the garage.
Did you see where Miss Roberts went?
I believe she pulled in behind me.
After you pulled into Meadows, John's home, and you stopped, what happened next?
We go into John's house.
When you went into John's house, did you all go in the same way?
Yes, we went through the garage.
And before going into John's home, did you do anything?
Before entering into the house?
Yes.
I took off my shoes.
You took off your shoes?
Yes.
Why did you do that?
Because you always had to take your shoes off at John's. He didn't want you to track. He would have yelled at me for tracking snow in his house.
Did you see if Kerry took her shoes off or not?
I believe she did.
Did you see whether the defendant took her shoes off or not?
She just walked right in.
How would you remember that?
Because I thought it was strange.
What was your purpose when you went into the house? What was the number one thing that you were worried about?
We were looking for John.
Anything else on your mind when you went into his house?
Also, I knew Kaylee was there.
Now, at this point, did you have a close relationship with Kaylee?
Yes.
Do you still?
Yes.
What did you do when you went in the house? Where did you go?
I walked through the kitchen, and then I kind of peeked into the TV room. I walked through the dining room, and then before I went up the stairs, I kind of peeked into a living room. I went up to the top of the stairs. I peeked into John's room, and then I went into Kaylee's room.
Did you ever see John?
No,
Why did you go to Kaylee's room?
because I wanted to go check on Kaylee.
Did you have a chance to speak to her?
I did, yes.
Okay. What was her demeanor at that point?
She was very, she was in the bed. She was holding on to her phone. She was terrified.
Was she screaming?
No.
Did you provide her any comfort?
Yes. I told her that I was going to go out. I told Kaylee that I was going to go out with them and I was going to find John. And I promised her that everything would be okay.
At some point, you left Kaylee?
Yes.
Where did you go?
I went back downstairs and then we went out to look for John.
Before you left John's house that morning, did the defendant show you anything?
Yes. When we were out in the driveway, I had thought it was when we went in, but I think it might have been when we came out. But regardless, at one point when we were in the driveway at Meadows, Karen showed myself and Kerry Roberts the cracked taillight.
Did you or Miss Roberts get close to the taillight at that point?
Yes, we walked over and the taillight was missing pieces.
Did Miss Roberts have any comment about it?
Yes, Miss Rob.
So she had a comment. Next question.
What was Miss Roberts' demeanor at that point?
She was frustrated with Karen. Had said that. You know, had said that Karen basically was telling her to shut up. You were so drunk, you could have hit anything last night. And then Kerry, I remember just thinking, all right, let's go. And I remember Kerry thinking, oh,
Well,
someone's
let me
going
not
to
ask
get.
you what Kerry-
Oh, sorry.
We don't want to think what somebody thought.
Okay.
I want to know what you heard and what you saw.
Mhm.
Okay?
Yeah.
All right. At some point when you were looking at the taillight with missing pieces with the defendant and Ms. Roberts, did you see Ms. Roberts point anything out?
Yes.
Share that with us.
She pointed a piece that was sticking out and was concerned that someone was going to catch their coat or something on it.
And during that time when the defendant is showing you the taillight with missing pieces, was she saying anything about it?
No, not that I can recall right now.
You mentioned at some point she was saying, did I or could I have hit him after you left John's house? Was that in the car or before you got in the car?
I know for a fact it was definitely in the car, was one of the times, yes.
Now, Ms. Roberts' car is parked behind the defendant's car in John's driveway.
Yes.
Was there a decision made to take one or two cars?
One car.
What was the plan?
The plan was to get into
We're watching here on Live Impact News on WCNC Plus, a key witness in the Karen Reed retrial. So big day of testimony today, hearing from Jennifer McCabe, who's a family friend of the late John O'Keefe, who is Reed's late police officer boyfriend. She apparently is not only a friend of the family, but was also out with Karen Reed and Mr. O'Keefe on the night that he was fatally wounded, and also there with Miss Reed when she found Mr. O'Keefe's body. We'll continue to listen in on this court on this testimony that we're seeing, but we wanted to draw your attention to some hazy skies that we're seeing back here at home in the Carolinas. So we've mentioned how we've been dealing with not only wildfires, but also prescribed burns. Specifically prescribed burns in the last couple of days. We've seen Forest Service pretty busy on that front. So yesterday we were talking about Anson County, seeing a couple of prescribed burns. Those are actually still underway, but we are seeing now, new today out of Stanley County, a 720-acre prescribed burn. So keep in mind, these are intentionally set fires meant to clear out, fuel essentially for wildfires, dead brush and things that might, spark a wildfire, keep it fueled in a situation where you have something that could get out of control. So this is actually looking towards Stanley County right now, and specifically Morrow Mountain State Park, which is the area that they're targeting for these operations. We're told by North Carolina Forest Service that this park area has been pretty difficult to clear out as far as the hazardous fuels is what they're calling it, but essentially the debris and dead brush in that area. It's pretty steep and rugged in some parts of the park, and so essentially they're just going to go ahead and burn everything out as they can and keep that controlled. But nevertheless, folks in that area will probably not only smell smokes, particularly if you're going to be northeast of the park in the Huari community. We're also hearing south of Asheboro might be smelling some smoke as well. And obviously you could probably see the smoke depending on how close you are. It could be a visibility concern. Obviously we're here, looking far off east of the Charlotte area off in the distance, and you can see just that haze in that area. So we'll keep you posted on anything else we hear out of that front, but we did want to let you know that that was underway in case you were out that way and you noticed smoke in the area and you're wondering, is this out of control or is this intentional? And indeed, folks, it is intentional. In fact, we're seeing probably about 6 or 7 intentionally set fires, prescribed burns around the state of North Carolina today, including, as we mentioned, the one here in Stanley County we're seeing live, and 2 in Anson County, which will be southeast of Charlotte. On Live Impact News on WCNC Plus, we want to take you to our live feeds that we're seeing now out of Washington, D.C. It looks like we're continuing to have lawmakers remarking on the 6888, as we told you before, the only black all-female unit to operate in Europe during World War II, and doing some important work, basically clearing out massive backlog in the mail service, and providing a big morale boost to those soldiers fighting overseas who are waiting for those letters. Let's listen in live right now.
In American history, led by Lieutenant Colonel Charity Adams Early, the daughter of a preacher, a member of Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated. I figured that would generate some type of reaction. And the highest ranking black woman officer at the time. These fiercely passionate, patriotic, and persistent members of the Women's Army Corps deployed knowing that they would confront the dual challenges of racism and sexism at the hands of their own military and beyond. Lieutenant Colonel Early once stated, "When I talk to students, they say, 'How did it feel to know you were making history?' And then she responded, 'But you don't know you're making history when it's happened.' I just wanted to do my job." And what a job well done by the 688. They were given 6 months to do what others could not. In a war zone, with bombs dropping above and horrific warehouse conditions. But with their life-saving and life-sustaining battle cry of "no mail, low morale," that's M-A-I-L, not M-A-L-E. Don't want anybody to get it twisted. No mail, low morale. They defied the odds and cleared millions of pieces of mail and years of backlog in only 3 months, record time. Record time. We gather today to salute these mighty veterans. We salute the ingenuity with which they sprang into battle. We salute the barriers that they broke in a system designed to push them aside. We salute their trailblazing spirit and the road that they paved for others. We especially honor those who gave the ultimate sacrifice, including Private First Class Mary Bankston from New York. Mary was killed in a vehicle accident along with 2 other members of the unit when the War Department wouldn't provide funds for their burial. The heroes of the 688 took up a collection to pay for their caskets and themselves laid their sisters to rest. That's the spirit, the soulfulness, the sisterhood.
Pivoting away here from House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries speaking on this honoring event today, Congressional Medal of Honor being offered to the 688. We want to turn now to some breaking news just into the Live Impact News studio, and this is regarding some legal action that North Carolina Attorney General Jeff Jackson has just announced. He says that he's filed suit against the Corporation for National Community Service, also known as AmeriCorps, for what he says is unlawful termination of congressionally approved funding in order to support Western North Carolina in its recovery from Hurricane Helene. Statement here from Attorney General Jackson stating here that these funds, quote, which Congress already appropriated for North Carolina are creating jobs, cleaning up storm damage, and helping families rebuild. Mr. Jackson goes on to say that AmeriCorps must follow the law so that people in Western North Carolina can confidently move forward. A little bit more about, I guess, the expectation of some of the services that was set to come from this AmeriCorps support. Looks like mid last month, AmeriCorps ordered more than 50 full-time volunteers to stop working on Hurricane Helene recovery in Western North Carolina. This was part of a larger termination of 750 volunteers that were working nationwide for the National Civilian Community Corps. And then later this month, North Carolina was notified that AmeriCorps would cut off several grant programs, and that would include Project Mars of Big Brothers Big Sisters of Western North Carolina, Project Conserve, which employs a couple dozen people who partnered with organizations helping Helene recovery with debris removal, tree replanting, storm system repairs. And then there was Project Power that is also reportedly impacted here. This is a group that assists more than 10,000 disaster-affected people in Buncombe, Henderson, and Madison counties. That is according to the Attorney General's office. So we'll continue to follow the latest with that. Seemingly, though, the federal cuts kind of trickling down in different ways now for Helene Recovery, and North Carolina Attorney General Jeff Jackson suing, he says, in an effort to try to get money he believes is rightfully belonging to the state of North Carolina to help folks recover from the storm. All right, with that, we want to turn back to the coverage out of Washington, D.C. in Emancipation Hall, the honoring of 688. It looks like we have Senator Chuck Schumer now speaking, remarking on this remarkable group.
Unit to serve abroad in all of World War II. Today, we honor the Congressional Gold Medal, the highest civilian honor bestowed by Congress to the trailblazing women of the 688. And by now, we all know the stories of their heroics, their great heroics. How they sorted millions of pieces of mail in record time, making sure soldiers received their letters and packages from back home. But also how they overcame doubt and discrimination to get the job done, how they lifted the morale of an entire army fighting for freedom. But before they could do any of this, they had to fight for even the opportunity to serve. At the time, black women had just recently been granted the ability to join the Women's Army Corps. Those who did were forced to train in harsh conditions, to live in segregated barracks, and were routinely assigned menial tasks like janitorial duties. Still, they persisted. They showed up every single day with dignity, discipline, and a dogged determination to serve. And when the opportunity finally came for the women of the 688, they answered the call and changed the course of history. They took on a mission that many others deemed impossible. They carried the weight of an entire army on their shoulders, and they illustrated that American heroes come from all walks of life, regardless of gender, regardless of race. So today, with this long overdue award, the 688 will take their rightful place in the pantheon of America's greatest wartime heroes. Their legacy, once overlooked, will now endure for generations to come. So God bless the 888, the 688. God bless our women and men in uniform, and God bless the United States of America. This is a great day for our country.
Back to even more breaking news here on the Live Impact News Studio and WCNC Plus. Just getting confirmation from Gastonia Police Department that one of its officers, Corporal Vincent Costner, has been arrested. Gastonia Police reporting that this followed an investigation by the Gaston County Police Department into allegations of animal cruelty. Sounds like this has been an ongoing case. The investigation, we're told, began earlier this year. Local authorities were notified about concerns, as we mentioned, of animal cruelty. We don't have any specifics on the actual case itself. For example, what kind of animal was this? Was it an animal in his care? We don't know any of that, other than to say that Gastonia Police Chief Trent Connard has issued the following statement regarding this arrest, saying, quote, "I'm deeply disappointed by the situation. We hold our officers to the highest standards of conduct, both on and off duty. No one, especially those who are entrusted with protecting the public, is above the law. We fully support the investigation and will continue to cooperate with our law enforcement partners." It sounds furthermore like Mr. Costner, Corporal Costner, went on with the Gastonia Police Department in December of 2020, so has been on the force for going on 5 years or so. Gastonia Police Department also releasing further details saying that it, quote, remains committed to transparency, accountability, and the ethical treatment of all living beings. Sounds like if we were to get more information for you on this, which we will, we'll have to probably reach out to different authorities, for example, Gaston County Police and Gaston County District Attorney's Office. So bear with us while our team digs into more of the case itself. But Gastonia Police Department notifying us just moments ago that it has one of its officers now under arrest due to allegations of animal cruelty. While we wait for more details on that, we can send you back now to Washington, D.C., where the honoring of the group 6888 is still underway. We've got new speakers now taking to the podium.
For the task. A story of professionalism and excellence and determination worthy of being remembered all on its own. But there's more to it than that. Because these women accomplished their task in the face of challenges no battalion of white men, or even white women for that matter, would have had to face. In addition to the ordinary trials of their service, they faced racism, segregation, hostility, and prejudice. But they did their jobs anyway. And for these trailblazing women and their exceptional commander, Major Charity Adams, deserve to be doubly remembered. It is an honor to be here today to witness the 6888 receive this recognition. And I hope that this medal and this presentation today will bring additional attention to their historic story. On behalf of a grateful nation, thank you.
All right, folks, as we are about to prepare to transition over to our 4 o'clock evening news, we just wanted to let you know, as far as a programming note, on this important day for our community, somber day for our community,